This is an introduction to the platform, or basically the website that we're building here today. Um, so it's an e-learning platform where instructors can just come in, create a course, and then sell it out to users. Users can buy in the course. Um, yeah, it's right now it's just the front end, but as part of the series, I will add backend to it. So there's gonna be more than one backend. One of the backends will be in Java Spring using Spring Boot, and also the same course we will build a backend with Express as well. If time permits, I will also I'm also thinking of using Fast API, for example, so I can also build Fast API as well, so that you guys will have an idea of what it takes to build backend in all the multiple frameworks. At the end of the day, you can decide which of the frameworks you want to settle with. So yeah, without wasting further time, let's go through the demo for what we're building in this session today. So today the tutorial would just be the landing page, but there's going to be more tutorials to follow where there's also a blogging system here integrated that allows you to write a blog, and then it can help your website for SEO as well, because some of those blogs you can write tutorials, more tutorials as well. There are people who would prefer the text tutorial over video. So the first thing that we're going to is the logo. So this is the navbar. Let me just say it. So the first part that we're going to is the navbar, and within this navbar here, here I have this text which is just a temporal for a logo. Once I design a logo, I find a designer who can just help me design a logo. Then the logo will be here. Whatever that you have in here is just the navbar links here. So buttons. Once I click on it, it just takes us to the different pages. But the focus today is just the landing page. So the demo that I'll be showing is just the demo of the landing page. As I go to the next part, then we'll do demo for those sections. The landing page also it reflows really well. That is very good. It's responsive. It's responsive to all devices. So here's the first page. This is just the hero section. We have this search which allows you global search, that you can search for any course. And here is just a list of some of the popular courses that we put on the landing page, so that when a student lands on the landing page, they can see the best-selling courses that are shown here. So you can see if you hover over it, you see that the card pops up here. We just scale the card a little bit so that students can. And if I click on any of this card, it will navigate to the courses page where you can see the details of this course and what to expect. The next section is where we talked about someone visit the website, they will know what to expect if they get a course from you. That is like tailored learning path, hands-on experience, thought process unveil. Because I feel like one of the biggest things that lag in the YouTube communities, people don't usually show the thought process. Usually, sometimes throw the CSS at you, just throw the JavaScript and figure it out. This is it. It works. Figure it out. But what makes this channel differs from other channel, we are gonna go through the thought process. How did I get to this point? So that next time when you're thinking of it on your own, if you're solving the problem, you can easily figure out why. There's a testimonial section, and in the testimonial section, there's a swiper here that just auto swipes. As you can see, the auto swipe just happens right now, or you can manually control it. You can also control it with your keyboard as well. Here's just a little bit more text and few buttons. This just allows you to join the platform. Here is a typical footer, and in the footer is just here as usual. It's just a placeholder. Most of this is also a lorem ipsum placeholder too that we're just having here. There are some quick links here as well. Some of these quick links are also from the same links that we have at the very top. There's get in touch, which just gives you more information, and then just the location of the website. So now that we've seen the demo of what to expect, so today in this session we're building the landing page. Without wasting more time, let's go through. Before starting anything, let's discuss what technologies are we using. So the front end will be built with React.js, and we're making use of Next.js on the back end. Not back end, but on the server side. So what Next.js is, for those of you who are new, it allows you to render your front end code from the server, and then you just send in the HTML directly. That's what Next.js does. So if anyone is starting a new project, I see no reason why you don't go with Next.js unless you have very specific reasons. But yeah, For styling, we're using Tailwind CSS for styling. And for UI library, there is a UI library called Shadcn. We'll be using Shadcn for, so Shadcn, it's a library that allows you to have components that are already built but not styled. So all you have to do is style the component the way you want. Most of the components that you're seeing here, this is a Shadcn card component. This is also a Shadcn card component, Shadcn button, and so on. So yeah, that should be it. Without wasting my time, let's dive right in. Let me open this. Uh, so first, let me just zoom this thing in so that some of you can easily see what I'm typing on the terminal. So let's get into. Let's create a new folder. Just calling it. Let's call it uh, e-learning YouTube. So this is just the e-learning YouTube tutorials, and then let's just get into the e-learning YouTube tutorial folder. So this just what this command is doing is just creating a directory. There are multiple ways that you can also create. If you're on Windows, you can just run the command that will just create a directory and then cd into the directory. First thing to do is let's go into Shadcn website. So here is the website for Shadcn. Click on components, is ui.shadcn.com. Click on components, and we're clicking on Next.js. Because we're thinking of setting a Next.js project, they have a command here that we can copy and then paste it right in our terminal. So copy this code here. There's also another option. Depending on which of them you're using, you can use yarn, npm, pnpm. So let's use yarn here. I'll copy it, paste it. Oh, so I'm just gonna cancel it because it's creating the app as my app. I don't want to name it, so I'll just come here and then change this part here from app to e-learning. So I just change this to e-learning. So let's run that. Would you want to use the source directory? No. Would you want to use the app router? Yes. Default import. Would you like to customize your default import? Yes. So we're going to customize our default import with app/component. So it shows the default. Just select enter for that. Okay, there you go. So we wait for that. Now that is done installing, next thing to do is just to cd into the project that just got created. So let's do this and see what is. So it's e-learning, cd into e-learning. This is our project that just got created. Cd and then get into it. Let's return back to Shadcn library. Copy this so we can initialize the Shadcn. Now let's go through some of the questions that it asks. Would you like to use TypeScript? Yes. Default. So the slate gray neutral is just how Shadcn components are going to come in. So for now, I will just click slate, but we're going to modify this thing later. Since, as you can see, the website comes with a completely different colors. So we're not going to use the slate, but for now, we just do that to. Where is your global CSS file located? Yes. Would you like to use CSS variables? Yes. Where is your tailwind.config located? Yes. So it is click enter, and then we have tailwind.js. So what's your import alias? Yes. Add components for component. Add apps. Are you using React Server components? Yes. Would you like to configure? Yes. So you can see these are the options that you can go with. The options doesn't really matter. You can pick any of the options depending on how you want your project to look. So if that is done, the first thing to do is just to run yarn dev. Well, before running yarn def, something I'm going to do, I'm just going to open the project. So there's this command that I can run code, and that will open the project for me. So let's move the terminal on this side and have it here. Let's minimize this. Let's close all this VS Code. Okay, so let's see what is generated. Let's go through the generated code and have an idea. But while that is, let me run the project. So yarn def will run. It started at 3001. It's because I have something on 3000. That's the demo that I was showing you. So in your case, this will probably run on port 3000. So you just visit here 3000 if you're not running. In my case, it's 3001 because that's another project that is running on 3000. So let's do this 3001. So while that is loading, let's go through the generated code and see what it generates. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So here is the template that comes with it. So let me minimize this. So the first thing to do is just to remove everything that is here because we don't need them. We're going to be implementing everything from scratch. So we're going to remove this here. And for now, I'll just have an H1 here. It's just going to say e-learning platform. So I'm just going to have e-learning platform. So you can see update, there you go. It updates here directly to e-learning platform. So without wasting more time, let's dive deeper into the generated code so you guys will have an idea of whatever that we're working with. So it generates this library. So it generates a folder called app, components, and lib. So lib, you can start with lib. Lib basically it's where we can have a lot of utility functions that we set within the app. So if there's anything right now, there's one of them called CN. We're gonna go through CN. What it does is just merge two Tailwind classes together. We're gonna dive deeper into this later. Here's where we will also add more utility functions if needed. There's a components folder here. Right now it's empty, but here is where our components are going to go. If we're creating any component, for example, looking at here, Navbar, it's a component, so we're going to put Navbar here. Yeah, something else that I forget to show during the demo is the app is also fully responsive as well. You see, it's very responsive. You click on here and then it opens this up. So you can do that. It's responsive for all screen sizes. You can see it is very, 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 very responsive. So yeah, let's return this to the size that it was. App. So we're using the app directory, and how the app directory works is if I create a folder here, let's say I call this folder auth, and then I have page.tsx, this is going to be a route. So let's just try this out since we're going to have an auth folder. So let me have small called page.tsx here. And within page.tsx, let's just create a new. So I just install is one of the plugins that I have that I install one of the Tailwind, one of the extensions from VS Code that allows you to just generate this product. If not, if you don't, you can just write it out. So let me call this auth component for now, and then just render anything here. Let's say we render an H1, set off. I'll save that. So if I come back to the app that we're building, let me move this so that we don't confuse that. So if I come here and then move the auth, you can see that we now navigated to auth directly. So there are ways that if I create any other folder here, well, the structures differs. You can have a parenthesis to make sure that it's excluded, but we'll dive deeper into all that. If I create any other folder here, what is happening in that folder is also going to be around. But since we do not need this for now, I'm just going to remove this. Yeah, and then delete this file. So we're just going to go back to the, let's go back to the landing page. So since we don't need this auth for now, I'm just removing it. The other generated files that are important is the tailwind config.ts. So this Tailwind config is very important. Here is where the configuration for some of our Tailwind classes lives. So we'll also be modifying the Tailwind configuration later. Yeah, I think that is it for the boilerplate. Without wasting more time, let's dive straight into coding. So looking at the demo, the first thing that we're going to build is the navbar. Navbar is just the first part of the code that we're building. So yeah, let's dive straight in and start coding. For the navbar, one of the things that uh, uh, that we'll be working through, as you can see, I'm gonna show you a demo before, so I'm just gonna extend this. See how the application doesn't go past this size, no matter what the screen size is. This is how I prefer to build my website. Usually I want it to be, no matter how big the screen size is, I want my website to be centered in the middle, so that those with bigger screen size monitors, the website is still centered somewhere in the middle, so that it doesn't go past that. So that's the first thing that we're going to configure. So you can see if I scroll down, then it maintains the size here. But if I go anything above this screen size, I'm on a desktop, and the desktop has big, the size of the desktop is really big. So some of you who are on laptop, you probably not be able to test this or hit it unless you have a bigger screen. So the first thing to do is just let's go into our Tailwind configuration and try to configure some of this. So let me minimize this, let me reduce this so that as we're developing, we see what we're developing. Right, so let's first fix that. Let's go to our body. So here is our body. Let me do this since we don't need it now. So inside the body, I'm just going to remove this children here for now, but we're going to, so since we need one main element inside, I just want the main element to be inside at the root layout. So anything that you are rendering will have to pass through. So we have this main layout here. So for easy access, let me just change this to e-learning app so that we can e-learning platform. Right, so this will change to e-learning platform. There you go. That changes to e-learning platform, and then I have my main and children. So the next thing to do is just to style our main, so that our main has like the style that we're looking for. So first thing to do is we have a class here, inter, which just applies the font. Let's remove this and then add in use Cn. So this is one of the utility libraries that I showed to you at the beginning. What Cn does is it allows you to add multiple CSS classes. So what are we doing here? We're just adding more classes, more CSS classes. I will just paste in whatever class, and then I'll have to explain it. But before we do this, let's get to our Tailwind and then add most of the config. Because some of the colors that Tailwind have, we need something completely different. So first thing to do is just to extend our Tailwind configuration and add new colors. So here is the colors that comes with Tailwind. If you just want to add a new color, and one of them that we are adding is called medium purple. So just come here and then type medium purple. We are adding an object because it's a multiple variant that we are adding. So the first color that we are adding is 100, and here is the color. So just gonna, so I'll just paste in these and then just explain. So just bear with me. I'll just paste in these colors and then explain. So I have 100 here, which just points to this color. 200 also points to a slightly different variant of that color, and there's also bold. So you see how in Tailwind, if we're using the Tailwind class, right, you can do BG white and so on. Here in this case, because we already have this color there, so Tailwind will already know this color. So if we want to do it, we'll just do medium purple and so on, and then we're going to get the same as BG white. So that's what this is doing. So this is the first part of the configuration. The second part of the Tailwind configuration is we need to add a new screen, because Tailwind has the different screen variants like small, medium, high, small, medium, extra large, and so on. So let me just importing from the default themes that are coming directly from Tailwind. And what we're doing is we're extending this default theme from, see how you have this theme here, extend. So we'll have to go in here below extend here. We are adding screens. So right now we're extending the new screen. We're adding a new screen to the Tailwind configuration. And what is happening here? So the default theme.screens comes with some pre-built configuration. For example, we'll be using this when you say SM. So Tailwind has a specific, it has a size. I don't know whether it is like 400 pixel, for example. So this is not the exact amount. If you also put medium, Tailwind also have a breakpoint of, like, let's say this is 768 pixel for medium. So these are not the real values. We can dive into real values later, but whatever that is happening here, Tailwind is just we are just telling Tailwind that we are adding a new configuration called 3XL, and this 3XL means that it is 1628 pixel. So when I was doing the demo, I was scrolling, the 1628 pixel is just for when we are so that we don't go out of screen, so that like our text is just centered in the middle. And we'll dive deeper into that. I think we're almost done setting up our Tailwind configuration. We'll click save and then go back to our layout. So within the layout, we will add a few more classes here, Tailwind classes, and then we'll just dive deeper into whatever that is happening there. So because this is the layout, so looking at this folder here, the layout that is directly on the app, any component that you are rendering within Next.js will have to be rendered inside here. So that will be passed as children. So you see the time that we created auth directory here, and that auth we have page.tsx. Whatever that is happening is auth will render its content and it will pass it up. So those are coming here as children. So if we do any style here, it's a global style that will be applied to every single component that we are rendering. So here is a good candidate to just put styles that you want to be generalized within the whole application that you're building. So first thing that we're doing is I just pasted a few styles here. This is optional if you want to have it, if you want to remove it, but it's just for text smoothing within Tailwind. What I'm doing here is I'm setting a background of purple blue, but we do not have purple blue yet. So we need to go to our Tailwind configuration and add another class called purple blue. So let's go back to our Tailwind config. We added one class here, the extend. We added one color here. So we're adding another color called purple blue. So this deep purple blue is going to be our background of the entire application. So while that is safe, I'll come back here and then just explain whatever that is happening here. So this is Flexbox, well, basic Flexbox. All what Flex is doing is we're saying this is Flex, and anything that you put inside this container, make sure that you center it. That's what item center and justify center is doing. So I'll save this and see if our application, if the background of our application is going to change. So that did not change. Maybe there is a background color. So if there's no background color, let's remove all these guys. I'm gonna save that. So let's reload here. Background color haven't changed yet. Let's see. Once we already extended, the next thing to do is just to give style to our children. So let's style it out. Maybe that is what is missing. That's why. So let's come back here to the layout. We have this main here. Let's just add a new class here for the main here, so that things can now show up here. So BG Deep Purple 500. I'm pretty sure some of you already caught this, but yes, we do not have that 500 in the Tailwind configuration. Just have Deep Blue Purple. So I will just come here, remove this 500 here. There you go. So now we have it. We have the background color that is applied on the entire application. Something else that you are noticing is CDE learning platform is not going outside of this. And one of the ways to know that we already set it, let's put here just a temporal background color of 500. So if you have this background color, as you see, as you scroll outside of it, the view is centered here. So this is where the style that we applied here come into play. So let me minimize this. That is where this style comes into play. We say that the maximum width that we want, it should be 1628. So this is the 3XL that we added. And what this is doing in Tailwind is we're saying the width is 100%. That's what screen, that's what full is doing. Minimum height should be screen. Screen is basically what you see, that is this height here. So let's check. If you hover over it, Tailwind will now tell you the style that is inside. So one of the style is 100 view height. So this is the height of the view that is visible. That minimum should always be that, right? So since we don't need this background color anymore, let's remove it. Yeah, seems like the boilerplate. And if we need any padding that needs to happen, this is the right candidate where we should put all the paddings that we need. For example, you see as it's scrolled, if we minimize it this way, we don't get any padding here. You can see, but the moment it hits, we get the pad. So, mm, all right, I'm pretty sure some of you already caught the bug. There is a missing here. So I was having this bug. That's why it was not applying. But yes. So if you go through here, you can see that the content is now centered. But as you go through here, there's no padding. So we need to add this padding here just to make sure. As you can see here, it is. So let's add padding here. From Tailwind has a padding class. So let's just put P4, which just applies a padding of 4. There you go. So now there's a padding of 4, but maybe we need the padding on only left and right. So we can do PR, which is padding left, and padding right of 4, so that we are not going to have those. So padding right and padding left. So you see, we only have the paddings on these respective ones, but not at the very top. There you go. I think now the setup is already done, so we are actually ready to start building. Yeah. So here we don't need a main here since we already have a main. So we can have this as a div. Remove this class name. So let me toggle this. So one of the first component that we are building is the Navbar. So let's create a new folder here called Navbar. So inside Navbar, let's create a file called navbar.tsx. So this navbar.tsx will just hold our navbar code that will be implemented. So let me do this. So I'll just type sfc just to get, let me call this component navbar. So within this navbar component, we are going to have a div, which is just going to be the parent one. But before doing any coding, let's go back to the navbar that we have here and see what is here. Then we can see what we need to do, the thought process here. So within this navbar, there's 3 sections. There's this logo section, there's a section for the navbar links, and there's also another section here for if someone is authenticated or not, someone, well, whatnot. So in order to do that, let's create 3 different divs within our parent div. So within here, we're going to create 3 different divs. So I'm going to call this div. So let's remove this. So the first div, let's call it logo. The second one, let's call it nav buttons or nav links. And then the last one, you can just call it right nav bar for now. So these are texts that we are going to change. So let's return back to our platform and see what we get. So nothing is going to serve because we did not render the navbar yet. So we have to go back to so let's see, we have to go back to app page.tsx. Instead of rendering this h1 here, let's render our navbar that we just created so that we can see and you can import. So one of the import alias that they were asking is going to be important here. So you say @/components navbar and then navbar. So because the component that we decide lives in that navbar. So if I click on save, we should be able to see 3 different items. There you go. And since we want this, the entire text that I want within this application to be white, so I'll just come to the layout here and then just change it. Just add text equals to white here. Text white. So this will just make sure that the text within the entire application will be white. If there's a need to modify the text, we will just modify it within the component that is calling it. So yeah, without wasting further time, let's dive back into the navbar component. Let me close the sidebar so there's more space. So let's start by styling this navbar component. So I'm going to use Tailwind class. So there's flex. What this flex does is just allows the container to reflect. So if I do it like this, you will see that the items will now be next to each other. The next thing to do is to apply justify between. So what justify between is doing is telling the view split it, separate it into different, split it into different parts, and then make sure that they all have equal space in between. There are other ones that you can try, like for example, justify around, justify even, play with it more so you can know the justify what this is doing. But if you're not familiar with Tailwind and you're familiar with CSS, what justify is doing is just applying justify content. There you go. Tailwind just helps me with it. Hover over it and you can see the exact Tailwind style that is getting applied. So it is applying justify content as space between. So there's space around, space even beyond, so on. These are, play with it. Yeah. So now that we have this basic navbar component ready, the first thing to, one of the first components that I want us to build is just the navbar link. So let me create here navbar links. Don't worry, the component is not yet created, but I'll just put navbar links so that this component can be used to hold. Because if we go back to our demo app, you can see if I minimize this, I can open this sidebar here. If I open the sidebar here, you can see we have this navbar links, but here they rendered separately. Done on this. So let me do this. Let me close this navbar links. Do this thing. So let's create this navbar links. The component doesn't exist yet. So within the same file here, let's create another one called navbar links. Navbar links.tsx. So within this navbar links.tsx is going to hold the code for our navbar links. But this is where Shadcn is now going to come into place. So the fact that there are some components that are already pre-built that we can use, and one of the components that looks really good to me is the navigation menu. So we can use this navigation menu. For us, we do not have a basically a hover. So once you hover over it, we do not have that. All we have is just this documentation. So first thing to do is copy this code to just install. That's one way to do it. Otherwise, you can just do the manual here, which is you can just copy the different codes and then just paste it right into the code base. But I find this to be a lot more easier just doing using the CLI, since we already have the CLI. Copy this. Let's come back to the terminal. So the app that is currently running, let's stop the app from running and then install it. Just paste the command and click enter. That will install. So while that is running in the background, do you want to install it? Yes, and that will install the navigation menu. So yes, components, whatever that we install, as you can see, it is added here. Tailwind already, the configuration already adds it on a component/UI. So one advantage here is we have the code here. So this is a library that the code it's in our own hand. For example, we can just come in here and then change the width mark if we want to change it, or we can change the style from inline flex to flex or grid depending on what we want. So let's get the app back running again. Yarn dev, the same folder. Let's shift our focus to the navbar links. So this is complaining because navbar links doesn't exist yet. But yeah, let's create navbar links without wasting my time. And yeah, so in the navbar links, it's let's go back to Shadcn website. So here is an example of a navbar link. So if you click on code here, you will see the exact same code, but we do not need some of these that they provide. But basically what I did was just copy this code here, paste it into my terminal and remove the sections that I do not need. In my case, it's just the first two sections. The one that was here is the one that I just duplicated. So I just looped through. So I'm going to put in the code for navbar links, and we're going to go through the code one by one for navbar links. So here is the implementation for navbar links, and we'll go through this code step by step. So here is navbar links. Let's create, so because the navbar that we have here, if I go back to the demo, which is here, it has these links here, and then we need to give it a specific type with TypeScript, since we're using TypeScript. So go back to the root folder. You can click on any of these files and then click on create file here. So we can do types.d.ts or type.d.ts. It really doesn't matter. And one of the first type that we are having is just the nav link. So what is nav link? So let's do export type nav link. So what this nav link is doing, let's say equals to that. So what the nav link is doing is just telling us what is the type of our specific nav link. In my case, I have an ID there, which I also have a path, which is just the path that it's also a string, so the path that we'll be navigating to. And the last part is just the name of it. So in this case, it's going to be home, dashboard, and so on. So this is also of type string. So we'll save this. Let's return back to Navbar links, and we can go through each of these and then just try to make sure that we understand what is going on. So here I'm just going to change the import to type. So I should rename this to types instead of type for simplicity, so that we are going to have more than one type here. So let's go through the code of whatever. Let me minimize the sidebar so you guys can have a full view of whatever code that is written here. So this is the navigation menu that comes directly from Shadcn here. This is just one way. If you don't want to use this navigation menu, the reason is it comes with a lot of accessibility inbuilt, that's why. But another way of doing this would be to just use, for example, to have a UL tag, and within the UL tag you can have a UL tag. Within the UL tag you can have multiple li tags if you do not want to use any of these libraries here. So this is one way of doing it. If you don't want to use a library, have a UL tag, style your UL, have multiple li's within that UL. But yeah, basically what this is doing is we have a navigation menu, and the navigation menu has a list. So within this list we have multiple items that are present in that navigation menu. In this case, I'm looping through because I'm going to have a constant. I'm going to define a constant which just have like name and so on. So that's what this is doing. So it's basically a copy of whatever that is there. So if you go back to the code here, you can see they have navigation menu. So I just copied it, navigation menu list, I have it, then the navigation menu item. In my case, I just want to loop through it. I think it's a lot more neater than just duplicating that however many times I want. So I'll save the navigation link. If I come back to here, now I can import it because the component actually exists. So now it needs us to pass a link, and one of the things is let's create a new file, and then we have let's create a new folder called constants. So within this constants, here is where we are defining all the constants that we need. So I'm just going to do index.tx so it can help with the exporting. So the first one that we are exporting is the export const navbar items. So whatever that we're exporting here is an array. So in this array, it's, if you remember the type that we already defined, so here is going to be, I think we call it nav link. Yes, the type of nav link, but it's an array. So in this case, you see TypeScript already complains because it's missing ID, path, and name. So let's pass in ID first. In this case, will be lowercase ID of 1. In this case, let's just use a string. It has a path of, so let's do the name first so that the path will be very straightforward. So have a home, and then the path of home is just the root path. This is just going to be that basically. So we need to add more because if you look at the navbar, there's 5 of them. So we can just duplicate that 5 times, change the ID, change the name here. The second one that we have there is dashboard, and the path is dashboard. The next one that we have, let me go back to the app, is courses. So COURSES. And the part of that is just courses. That is also blog, and the part of that is blogs. That is the last one, which is contact, and the part of that is contact. There you go. So now we have these items that we defined. This is just for simplicity. I separated them into its own constant folder. You can do this without actually separating. You can just define it in the same place where you're consuming it. So in this case is the navbar. So what I'm doing here, I'm just going to import it from here. It needs links, which is basically this array that we have here. This is coming from the constants that we just defined. So I'll save this. Let's go back to our e-learning platform and see what do we get. So we still get enough links, not yet changed. If we save this file, save this. Oh, after I install it. So let's reload. Because I think after I started the app, I did not reload it. So yeah, there's still cache that is coming from. There you go. So we're still having them slowly now. But there's still some more work to do. But don't worry, we'll get back to this again. Still more work to do here. One of them is the background color. So let's go back to tailwind.config, and in the tailwind.config file, we are changing. But before the tailwind.config file, let's do that first. So within the tailwind.config file, we are changing the background color of some of the components that Tailwind comes with. So here's the reason why we decided to use like CSS variables. So it's going to be very easy for us to change anything that we want. So yeah, let's get to the, where is that file again? It's globals.css. So globals.css, we're changing the color of the card here, the base color. We're changing for both the card, and then I'll just bring in the color very soon. So this is the color that we'll be using here for the background, so that it can lace really well with the background that we have. So the card, this is the Shadcn card, and the pop over as well. So we're overwriting these three colors. Now once I click on save, you can see, there you go, now it becomes beautiful because the background is now this background that we specified here. So this is going to be the case for most of the Tailwind classes that we're going to use. They will, most of the Shadcn components, they will have this background now. Since our app is in this background, if we need any other background, then we can just change it. So you can see if I hover over it, now you see that beautiful background. Now it shows that white background. Yeah, seems like we're done with it. One thing that we need to do is we have to make sure that this Navbar component is responsive. So right now the Navbar link component is not, it is responsive. So let me explain what is happening here. So this is one of the breakpoints that we're using from Tailwind. So I explained one of the MD breakpoints at the beginning. In this case, it is 768 pixels. What is this code doing? So the first part that we're putting is hidden. This tells Tailwind that if you're styling this component, it should be hidden by default. It should start with hidden. MD, meaning the moment Tailwind gets to 768 pixels, then make the container flex. So what this hidden is doing is just setting the display to none. So it means if I reduce this to the size of less than 768 pixels, it is gone. Why? Because I have the hidden here. So if I take it, which means if I go outside here, this means we're above the 768 pixel, then the display is now flex. Display flex just makes it visible. There are other display that can work here. But yeah, this is doing the trick. So now we have this part to be responsive. We need to do the same thing for the navbar, by the way, because here is, if you look at the reflow one, as you can see, this is the demo. It got replaced by drop down. It got replaced by a hamburger menu. So the same thing will happen here. So let me go back here. Now we can see these buttons here. What is remaining is we need to style our navbar and then just give it some height. Because it seems like right now it just doesn't have height. So let's do a little bit more styling onto the navbar. So there you go. So yeah, let's continue right next to it. Let's get back to navigation bar. So now we have this right navbar, and the same way we also need to apply the same classes that we want. We want it to start hidden by default. If you begin, just hide. If you get MD equals to, then just set the class to flex. Display initially. So the right nav is now going to show up. As I minimize, it's gone, completely gone. Don't worry guys, we'll replace it with a hamburger menu. So it's gone, it's back, it's gone, it's back. There you go. So we have that part ready. The logo is just, we're not hiding the logo anyway. Well, the just to show you that we can so let me do let me write another div here, and then this div is just going to represent the the, the hamburger menu. So let me just say the menu icon. So we need to apply, we need to give it a class. In this case, we are giving it a class name. So here is the opposite of what we were doing. Whatever that we're doing is once you start hidden and once you get to MD, make it flex. Here we're showing it flex. The moment we get to MD, we're hiding it because we now want to switch these two. So you can see it's the complete opposite of this. If I save this, come back. Right now we're going to have the right menu icons, but as I scroll down, you see the menu icon now. So right bar, menu icon, right bar, menu icon. So now that we have the layout set up, let's now start building the components for the order to let's start building the components. So the first thing to do is just before building the responsive site nav is let's build a responsive site nav. So this responsive site nav is this bar here that is going to be used to open. So let's create a new file here called responsive sidebar nav.tsx. So what this responsive sidebar nav.tsx is, let's go back to Shadcn library and see which of the UI library can help us. And one of the ones that caught my attention is the seed right here. So if I open it, you can see it opens a seed on the side. So we definitely need this so that we are going to, and you can position however you want to open it. Like you can put a position of top, it opens at the very top. Left, opens left. So this is the left one that we need. So what are we doing next? We're installing seed from Shadcn. Copy this, come back to your project, stop the terminal from running, Control C, paste. Let's install seed from Shadcn. So yeah, type yes to confirm that installation. Once that is done, we can fire our app back up and then reload. So we can now dive deeper into the behavior of the responsive sidebar nav. There you go, it's done. So let's dive right back in. Here, let's get into it because this is how Shadcn works if you're fairly new to it. This is just the behavior. They have a seed triggers here that makes sure that like we don't change most of our components into client components because we are just because we need an interaction. So what this does is, if I go back to the demo here, for the first one, the demo here, I see this open. So basically it's just this trigger. They have this called trigger, seed trigger. Anything that you put there, once you click on it, it will trigger this seed to either open or close as whatever that you pass in as child. So yeah, now that we know that we can modify that, in our case that seed is just going to be the icon. So I'll just put in the code for the seed and then we're going to go through line by line to just explain whatever that is going on here. So for the seed, we need a few more. So we need button. We do not have a button. So before starting the project, let's cancel these back again and then install button. So you can go back to Shadcn here, go to button, right here. And here is you can just copy this, come back to a terminal and then paste it. In my case, I just have seed, so I just remove that and then just type button here. So that will trigger it, yes. Right, so since we have that installed, I'm just going to go to the set. So we have the nav. One of the things that we are missing is, let's go and build. It's just if I go back to the demo here, which is here is the demo. So you see here where it has like this button of my course, and it also have this menu here that you can switch. Let's build this one and then come back to this. What this is doing is, it's a component that we have on the site. If a user is authenticated, it shows this component. If a user is not authenticated, it shows the other component that is it shows this the other component has two buttons, login or sign up, which is like get started, whatever it is. So let's build that component, which is like called right nav bar right dot tsx. So what this navbar right does, like I explained, it just takes in most of these components that we have and then just show it there, show it right there, so that users can actually use it. So let's get to the right bar nav. So the code for right bar nav, it's very simple. I will just paste it here, and then don't worry, we'll go through every single code here just to go through the so we can know. So we need a few more libraries from Shadcn. Let me create a new file here. The file that I'm creating is just called auth nav buttons. So this is auth. This is the buttons that I was telling you guys for when a user is authenticated or when a user is not authenticated. So that's the auth nav button. Right, yeah, so we can dive right into, let's create the auth nav button first. So here is the auth nav button, is just, we just need two of these buttons from auth nav. That is one of them, which just creates the, right, so let's get into the auth nav button. So here is just the auth nav button. Auth nav is actually very simple. So we just have two buttons from Shadcn. Let's see if our terminal is actually done. Yes, it seems like we already installed the button. So let me run the app again. Whatever that we're doing, we have to go back to the button because we are adding some modification to the, this is why Shadcn is very powerful, because you see they have some variants that comes in by default. There is a new variant that I created. This new variant just allows us to have a different variant. And in this case, the whatever that I added in the variant is called cost up button. And what this cost up button is, just makes sure it gives us a button that is from our cost. In this case, let me close this guy out here. So yeah, we have this cost up button here. Is so what I did is just duplicated these guys here. So let me close this so you guys can have a more view. So after link here, I'll just add in the new one here. What this cost up is basically whatever that they have here. It's just the variants. I just set in background color, I give it a text, give it a foreground, just hover over it. You can just do the same thing, so we can have this variant. This is why Shadcn is so powerful, right? Because we can extend the same component at whatever variant that we want. And we're going to get it by default. So let's get back to the auth nav buttons and see whatever that is happening here. So we are displaying a component as flex. So let's just remove this guy so we don't need that. So we're setting that the component is flex. The moment you say that components are flex, it means the items will now be right next to each other horizontally. So if I wanted them to be vertically, I would just add here something like flex column. It means I want them in column. But now, in this case, I just want them horizontally. So I have these two buttons here that I just copy paste. Basically similar to whatever that we have there. So the first button is variant. I just put a variant. This is just one of the variant that comes in. You will have this variant by default. This variant, you will not have it until you add it. So whatever that is I'm doing here is I'm just setting the, saying that I want the max width to be 100 pixel, and I also want it to be rounded 3x. Rounded 3x, just giving it a border radius. So if I save this, right, so we have this part ready. Let's get back to the right bar now. Here we have this component here, which is the auth button. So whatever I'm doing here is I'm just trying to make sure that we can interswitch between them. So what I'm doing is, just give me 1 minute. Let's come back here to right bar nav, right? So in this case, there's one component that is missing, which is sidebar nav. So, and that is the component that will be shown once a user is logged in. So in this case, that is this component here, which is sign in right. We do not have that yet, but we do have the auth buttons. In this case, the auth button is already implemented, so we can just do this. We have the auth button. So yeah, it doesn't take a class name, so we just remove all these things guys for now. So there is one component that is missing that we're going to create is the sidebar now. But before creating this component, let's have a view of what this odd looks. So let's come back here. Instead of rendering here right by nav, let me open, let's do this and then just render the odd buttons here for now, just to make sure we can visualize what we just implemented. Yeah, we need to import it and it should come from .navbar. Let me save this and come back to our application that we are building, this e-learning platform. This should now change. So did I start the terminal? I think I did start the terminal. So let me just reload it. So this will reload it. You can see, so this component here will be interswitch depending on if you're already authenticated or not. There you go. So we already have this right here, exactly what we are looking for. So I don't like how the navbar looks like, so we need to add a little bit more style so that, because right now you see there's no padding at the very top, things are not centered. So we can do items center, and what this is going to is just going to center our, just to make sure that everything is centered. And we need to give it a height. In this case, we want it, let it have a height of 820. So 820 is 80 pixel. So we're just making sure that it is 80 pixel. There you go. And something else that I want to add is, let's add a new line. So this navbar, let's just wrap everything inside another div. So let's use React fragment first. If that doesn't work, then we can just wrap it in a div. So let's put an HR here, which just adds a horizontal line. So within this HR, let's give it a class. Well, let's just save this and see if we get a line. There you go. So we have this beautiful line here that just shows up here. Right now we're showing these two buttons, either login or get started. But yeah, if you can see the demo, it was in between this button that we already have or the other component. So right now we're going to build the last component, which is the sign in right now. Sign in right now is just the right navigation that shows up when someone is signed in. So you can just call it sign in right now. .tsx. So this sign in right now.tsx uses the drop down from Shadcn. So we have to go back to Shadcn and then install the drop down menu. There you go. So this drop down menu is basically the menu that I showed you guys when I was doing the demo. So let's stop it and then install this. Coming back to the terminal, stop the terminal from running, install the drop down menu. So this is installing the drop down menu. While that is going on, yes, type yes, so it will get it for us. So let's go to the drop down menu and see what code that they have here in the Shadcn website. So here is the drop down menu on Shadcn website. Let's go to the code that is rendering this. If I click on open, you see they have, this one has checkboxes. I don't think we actually need this one. So there's another example. There's another example here. There you go. So in our case, we need this login, we need profile billing. So we can just copy this code directly. Whatever that is happening, I'm going to explain. So this is very similar to the seed. Remember where we have the drop down menu trigger, which is responsible for triggering the drop down to the seed to open. That's the same way here as well. So we have the drop down trigger. So it means we are going to have a drop down. Inside drop down, we'll have drop down menu and then the drop down content. So the content is whatever that you see inside here. In this case, it starts with profile billing. So if I go right in here, you will see that the first one that we have is profile here. Right there, we have billing. So I modified this just to copy the same thing, paste it here, but I remove it just to make sure that we only get what we want. So let's walk in through here. It's the same that we have here. It's just the drop down menu that we have, which in this case, so what do I do again? Just give me 1 minute. I think I'm missing a few things. So right, okay. So we'll go through this. Let me remove this here. We'll add them later. For now, we do not need them. But we'll add them later and then just come back to it. So let's call this my courses, for example, that we go to router. So here is the drop down menu, the same drop down menu here, and within the drop down menu we have the drop down trigger. But in this case we are the one adding our own trigger. Well, something else that we can do is instead of passing this as children, so let me explain. So for the right sign in nav, let's just come in here to right sign in nav and then just copy this, come here to right sign in nav and then just paste it here. So I'm going to explain whatever that is happening here. Bear with me. So right sign in nav, this is the same drop down menu that we have. Drop down menu trigger and so on. So in this case, in our case, is we want it to contain an avatar once a user is already logged in. I don't think we install the avatar yet, so we need to install the avatar. We just do not need to drop down. So we need to drop down and then a few other things. So we need to install avatar, and avatar comes from Shadcn. So if I come here to components, let me lower the screen, and there is avatar right here. So we're using this avatar for the right sign in nav. Copy it, come back to the terminal, add the avatar. So after we added the drop down, then we add the avatar. Do we want to install the component? Yes. So let's wait for the avatar to complete, since it's one of the libraries that we did not have installed. So we can save. I can save this file now. We already have it. Let's run the application again. Yarn dev, that will run the application. So let's come back to right nav. Right now we don't need all this since we are passing this. Let's remove this and then just close it. Yes, there you go. So whatever that is happening here is let's do this. I think the imports are not different. So sign in, right sign in nav, and we don't need any of these interfaces. We'll get back to them later. So I'm just going to remove this guys here for now. Remove this guy, and then just let's clean up some of the imports here. Okay, right there. So this is the right nav that we're implementing. Right now, whatever that I have is, I'm just trying to simulate between a logged in and not logged in. So I'm just generating a random number 0 and 1. And whatever that is, if the number is 1, then I'll show the sign in nav. We are going to do the same thing for once a user is authenticated. So this is going to change to authenticated, for example, the name, which is just a boolean that we're going to have. This boolean here is just what we're going to show. So let's say this equal to 1. So now we already have the boolean, and we can just put authenticated. If this is true, we run that in Navbar. We're going to change this later once we added a backend for signing in and signing out. Then we will just change these things easily. So now that we have the right nav, whatever that was missing is we have the logo at the beginning, then we have the authentication, the links in the middle, and then we have the right nav. So what are we doing now is just to go back to our nav bar here. Within this nav bar, instead of rendering the odd button here, now we just do the right nav here, because this right nav is responsible for checking whether it's authenticated or not. So which in this case, what do we call? It's the navbar right. So navbar right here. Let's close it, and let's get did we start the application? Yes, it's running. So let's come back here to our e-learning platform, reload this. Now it's going to be context switching between the login buttons or the authenticated one. So while that is loading, we can come back to our code. Let me explain whatever. You see, now it has selected this one here. So if I hover over it, you can see it's showing the different here. So these are the different languages, for example, French, Hindi, Spanish, and so on. So it's basically whatever that they have on the Shadcn library, and then I just modified it just to keep whatever that we need, and then just remove the next. Right, so I think that completes this part here. The other one that we added is the seed. We can test that one out. So if I come back to the nav here, instead of menu icon here, we already have a responsive sidebar that we implemented here. So which is coming back to Shadcn, it's just this seed library here. Why is it? Come back. Here. You remember when we were doing it, I was clicking between left. So there's a content, there's a property within the content here that we can change to left. If you put it left, it will open it on the left. So I think because it's TypeScript, the TypeScript is telling us the different options, either bottom, left, right. In this case, I want it to be left, so I put it to left. So let's dive deeper into the styling here, whatever style that is applied here. Here is just the trigger. Like I explained before, the content is where the style happens. Because I'm opening it on the side, I don't want the width to be more than 100. Right? I don't want the width to be more than 400 pixels. Sorry. So that's why I set a max width of 400 pixels so that the width is full because it's going to get the width from the parent. So it's the same thing as putting this width full, but it's just putting like maximum basically. So you're saying that give me the full width, but let it not exceed 400. That's what this is doing. We have the width full by default since it is getting that from the parent component. So I applied flex to it, but before, let me show you whatever that this is showing. Let me save it for now. Come back to the right nav here. Instead of the menu icon here, we're just showing the responsive. We're showing that. So let's import it. It's just coming right next to the component that we have. So let's go back to the application, minimize it to the point that this guy is going to show up. Yeah, now you can see that it's showing up. So if I click on it, it opens this guy up. But there is a problem because we do not have the background. We do not have a background color here. That makes sure that it differentiates it from the normal view because they all have the same background. But yeah, this is what is happening here. So it's similar. The justified content is similar to what we did for the navbar here. Remember why we have this and then put the justified content here. In this case here, I'm gonna minimize it. It shows up, but we do not have a background, and then we need a background. So let's control click to it. So there is a background that is getting. So let's go back to our Tailwind config because we added a new color here for Tailwind config. It's called deep purple blue. So in this case, it doesn't have any 100 or 200. So let's get back to our component here. So this should just be deep purple blue without any 100 or 200 modifiers. So if I save this, we should be able to now see a background here, which is now differentiating it from. So let me reload this. Let's see. Well, the background is not getting applied. Let's see what is getting wrong. So let me search this deep purple blue. Maybe I did not type that correctly. So I installed an extension called Tailwind autocomplete, so it can help us. Yeah, deep purple blue. We have the deep purple blue background. And why is that not showing in the seed component? Let's see what is the reason why that is not appearing. Let me, before the deep purple blue, just to make sure, let's apply like a red 500 and see, or red 600. See if that is good. Oh, that did appear. So let's do this and apply a deep purple blue. Oh, I noticed one thing. I think our deep purple blue is not the right style. So the right style should be medium purple like there. Let me double check if the right style should be medium purple. So yeah, this comes directly from the design. Let me go back to the Tailwind config and then to see whatever color that gets added. Whether it's deep purple or just deep purple. Right, so let's come back here. Let's modify our Tailwind for deep purple so we can add multiple variants. Return back to Tailwind config, add use an object, and then add this deep purple so that we can get the 200 here, which is just the thicker version of this 100 here. So let me save this. Let's return back to our sign-in nav. Is it here? Responsive site nav. So deep purple blue, let's put 200 here. Yeah, there you go. Now I think this is the right style that we are going to. There you go. Beautiful. But we did broke something. We broke something. What did we break? Let's go back to our Tailwind config. We did broke something. Sometimes the Tailwind configuration, when we start it, let's restart our application and see if that is going to solve the problem. Because I think we only added this first time here, so for some reason, shouldn't go back. Let me reload here. Yeah, that is loading component from the server. Let's see what happens. Right, so there's something that we broke here. Let me go back here and see whatever. Yeah, this is what we have before. So we have deep purple blue. I added another deep purple blue. This time I have the 100 and also the 200. So how does this cause a problem? Oh, let's check if we're using this deep purple blue anyway. If you put deep purple blue of 100 in the layout. Oh, right, that makes sense. That makes sense why that is happening. So now this should be deep purple blue 100. So I just did a global search. Yeah, so this turns out to be deep purple blue 100. There you go. Problem is now solved. So what the issue was is inside deep purple here. Before I was just doing it, but now that we change it, so Tailwind is not finding deep purple and it fall back to a white background. So let's try to open here. There you go. Now that we open here, you can see everything is now visible now. So this now looks a lot more better than we have before. Let me close this. So if I go back to a bigger size, there you go. Now that is appearing. There you go. So that's looking beautiful now. The only thing to do is we need to let me minimize this. We need to change the color of this icon here. I don't think we need any background on that icon, but we can deal with that later. But for the most part, our navigation menu is done. So you can see it's looking really good. As you extend the screen size, minimize it, it looks amazing. So the next part that we're building is the hero component. So yeah, let's get started on the hero section. So here is the hero component. So let me just do it further. This is the next section that we're building immediately after building the navbar. Now that we see that we have a navbar that is fully responsive, the next section is just to build this part here. So what is it thinking around this? Once I get a design like this that I need to build, the first thought that comes to my mind is, oh, I can split this into two different parts of the screen, but the image is not that big, so it should not take the whole screen. Like it should not be 50-50, right? And one way of doing that is grid is very good in splitting views into different weight without actually specifying the exact weight. So we'll be using grid for this. Yeah, without wasting more time, let's dive straight into coding the hero section. So first and foremost, let me create a new component, not inside UI, but inside components here. Click on components. There are two ways to actually do it. You can just click on a create a new file in VS Code. It's just a shortcut. If you put hero and then put hero/hero.tsx, this will create a folder for you called hero, and inside hero it will create a hero.tsx. So if I just do that, there you go, it creates a folder and it creates a file. So let's just do sfc, have an initial hero component. So in this hero component, let's just have a div with inside this div, let's have another div that we call an h1 that we call hero. Let's just make sure everything is running. So since this is already, let's import it inside our app. In this case, now we're just rendering the navbar. Let's just render the hero component. We're importing the hero component is coming from where the navbar is coming. Hit on save. We expect to see a text here that is saying hero. There you go, we see it. But because we are rendering multiple components inside here, let's make this class div. Let's make this div class flex. Let's put flex column, which means whatever that we render here, render it in a column format. let's also have a gap that we have in between here. So for example, we can put a gap of 80 pixel. So this makes sure that any items that we render inside here, it will give it a gap of 80 pixels. So there's going to be a gap in between the first and the second item. So in the navbar, there's a bug in the navbar because the uh, this this React fragment that we're doing is returning this as two different components. That's why there is a gap in between. So what we have to do is just to wrap this in a div, and then we should be good. So now it's going to go back to normal because then it's going to treat it as one. There you go. Now we have the hero section here. So yeah, I think that should be. Let's remove these guys here. We no longer need it here. Save even the right bar. Well, we do need that one. So coming back to the hero component, we're just rendering the text hero. I think that should be, we should now be okay to now actually start implementing the hero section. Maybe there are a few more styles that we will need, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe the gap is too big. I think we should, let's do a gap of 100 instead. It's too small rather than saying it's too big. Let's do a gap of 100 pixels here. There you go. So now that we have this gap, so we can now have the hero component right in here. So what we have to do is going back, since this is what we want to do, like I said, we're going to use grid to just spread whatever that we're doing out. So let's return back to the hero section. And within the hero section, we can define the grid layout that we are going to use, and later we'll make it responsive as well. So the first class that we want here, let's give it a class name of grid. So grid is slightly different from flexbox. If you already know about, this is just for those who don't know about grid, but it's a layout mechanism, and it has a property called grid template columns. I did not spell that correctly. So grid columns. So if I do grid columns equals to 2, whatever that is happening, if I put two different items here, grid is going to split it into two equal parts. So if I save this and come back to our application that we're building, grid is now going to render two different hero components. In our case, we don't want them to be 2, and if this is changed to 3, and then I reload it, grid is going to render 3 of them in one row. You see, and if I put anything more than that, it's going to render it on the next row. So that's going to appear here. There you go. But this is not what we want. In our case, there's only 2 div that we have, and one of them, there's only 2 div, which is this one has the hero text, and then the other div have the last div, which just has an image. So we can just create a div here, and then we'll later replace this with an image component that is called image. So I said we don't need this. What do we need now? In this case, we need a grid layout. And in this grid layout, we put in grid template columns. Instead of specifying 1 or 2, we need 2, but we're going to remove the 3 and then put a curly brace. Then this means that we want to specify whatever that we want. So for those of you who are familiar with CSS, whatever class that we are running here is just called display grid, and then we also have grid template column. So that's what this is running. So if you're already familiar with Tailwind, that's okay. If you're not familiar with Tailwind, this just represents grid template columns. That's what this represents. So if you hover over it as well, template Tailwind will also tell you whatever that we are running. So in this case, I want this to be 2fr underscore 1fr, and we'll explain what this means. This 2fr means take twice as much as the space that is available, and 1fr is just take the other one space that is available. So this means divide the view into 3 different parts. The whatever width that is available, I want this guy to take twice as much as this other guy. So that's what is happening. This one is taking 66%, and this one is just taking 36%. Why is my math? 33%. So if I split that out, you can see we have the hero text here, we have the image. So if I put 3fr here, what is happening is going to take 3 times as much space as the last one. But in our case, we only need 2. So there's the hero section and then the image section. what I will do is I'm just going to put the code for the hero section, and then I'll explain whatever that is happening. So inside the hero section, there's more components here. So let me just copy this and then just paste it, which is just going to replace this thing. But we're going to dive deeper into it. Don't worry. Site input will create it, but for now I'm just going to comment it out and then just put a div here called site input here. So for the interest of time, I'm not just going to sit down here and then just type all this code while you guys are watching me. So what is happening here? Let me minimize this and explain. So we will come back to all these styles are just for like some of these styles are just for responsiveness. We'll come back to that. What is important now is here we're putting a display of flex. We're setting it column, flex column. So these are the three important styles that you can begin with. So let's say if you're the one typing, just type these three styles. What this is doing is similar to justify between that we did before, but now because we have the flex as column, is putting these three items and then spreading them into three different parts. So let me save this and you guys can see whatever that's happened. So you see it has these three different items here. It has this as the first one, and we have this view as the second one. Then we have the site input as the next one, as the last one. Site input is a component. We'll build a component. So that is what these three styles are doing. The gap here is just because these three styles here, I want to give it a gap. So this gap is more useful when we are on a smaller screen size, so that if the width is the same, then the gap is going to apply. So for now, the gap can be for smaller screen sizes. But other than that, is here is just a maximum width. I don't want the maximum width to exceed 978, but this is also optional. So I can also remove the max width. So this just allows it to also flow. So if you want to then remove it, so I just put the max width there in case that I needed it. But I do not need the max width there. No matter how much it flows, it can take twice as much. So width full, height full, this is typical. It's just sometimes when you create components, just make sure that take as 100% of the width that is available to you. In this case, it's going to take twice as much as what was here, right? So I think those are the big chunk. The next one is we're just defining these texts here. Here, I just put it inside a span because I want it to have a completely different color. That's why I put this master in a span. If not, I would have just rendered them together. Here is just the last part where we are rendering this big text here. Right, so the last part here is just the site input here. Nothing, all these styles here, there's nothing special. It's just setting the class to relative and then max width of blah, blah, blah. The one that is missing is the site input. Now we need a site input component. Going back to here, this is the site input component here. We do need the same site input component, right? Because we want our component to be users to be able to cite for causes. But the site input is also used in other places. I would have just implemented right here, but it's good to create a separate component called site input because it is used. So we go to component level, click a file here called site input because it is a component that is used across, so we can just put it in the root, in the parent directory of components. So I'm just gonna call sfc create call site input. So inside the site input, we will add the image because you can see the image is an SVG image. We'll add that image there. But before the image, let's dive into the site input and see whatever code that we have inside the site input. So before we go into that, site input is using a component from Shadcn called input. So let me do this so I can see. Let me extend it so I can see the input. So there's a component here called input. This is the input that we're using, so we need to install this input. Click on this, go back to the terminal. Inside the terminal, let's stop this, Control-C, install input, click enter. So this will install the input. While that is installing the input, let me put the code right in for the site input. And we're going to go through the site input code line by line so we understand what is happening here. So site input is taking a client component, right? We're making it a client component. Why? Because we need interactivity. That is the reason why we are having it to be a client component. Interactivity, because user is typing inside that site input. Whatever that is happening here, it's a common Next.js thing. If anyone have a better way of solving this is why Next just keep on complaining. Whatever that is rendered on the server is different from what's rendered on the client. So this is a way of just telling it if it has mounted, then if it's not mounted, then return, so that it will not return multiple things. So if you have a better way of solving this, please leave it in the comments below so I can go into it and probably update the next part of the course where I have these areas there. So a few more things, because the site input has two other components. It has an input, it also has a button that we are placing. So the button, we are placing the button dynamically using absolute, right? But the first thing to do, let's go through the styling of this. This is just a typical style of width, full, like I said, display, flex, position relative. The reason why I make this class a position relative, because there's an element inside this class that I want to place absolutely. That is the reason why we have this position. That's the reason why we have the position relative there. So yeah, let's continue on. So these are just typical ways of just setting the background color, setting the text color, and so on. The thing that I added is so here is the keyboard so that users can search using the enter key. So whatever that is happening here, I use the on key down event. So this is an event listener. Anytime there's a key down event happens, this function is gonna get called. Anything that I'm interested in is just the event.key enter. So if a user enter, then I'll handle the search. So the search is, I'm passing different inputs here. One of them is the input class name, because we have the input. Depending on whosoever is calling the class, if they want, they can modify the input anyhow they want. The same thing for the button class name. Now there's an input placeholder. In our case, I put a default value of search just to make sure that if a user doesn't type in the placeholder, because these are all optional features, is going to have search. So yeah, nothing out of the extraordinary. Now this is the button that we place absolutely. So I set the width, the button to absolute with respect to the parent component, and then I put right equals to 0. In this case, it's going to put the button and it will put it right equals to 0. Whatever that is happening here is just styling the button so that the width of that button is going to be 48 pixels. So yeah, let's save that, import the component inside the hero and see what we have. So let me uncomment this here, do that, come back to, let's import this guy here. Oh, oops, what did I went to settings instead? So I'm on Mac and then control period, it will show me the option for site input. So I can save that. We can go back to the, it's here, create next, e-learning platform. So we're waiting for the site input. So did I run the terminal after creating? It's been hidden. Yes, I did not. Don't expect to see anything. So now that this is running, let's reload this e-learning platform, and we should expect to see a site input that shows up here. Right now, these things are just no up. We are going to change this once we implement. We'll just do it once we integrate it with a real backend. Then we're going to change all this. So there is a problem. Let's see how we can fix this problem. Starting function cannot pass directly unless you explicitly expose it, making use sound. So this component here, the hero component, needs to be a client component, because it is the component that is implementing, is the component that is using the site input, and the site input needs interactivity. So we'll come here and then put this use client, save it. So hopefully the error is now going to go away. Yes, the error did go away, and yeah, we have the site input here. So as I move here, you can see the site input is also growing. So the site input is also responsive. So as I go, it is also responsive as well. So since we have that one ready, the next part is just the image. For the image, in the branch, you have to check out this branch on GitHub, which is the landing page branch. The branch will be up immediately once I post this on YouTube. Then the branch will be up. Once the branch is up, check out, copy the code from hero image.svg. So it's an svg component. In my case, I'm just going to copy it and then just paste it right inside public. I'm going to create a new file here called hero image.svg. Hero image.svg, and in this hero image.svg, I'll click on save. So yeah, the next thing for us to do inside here is just to render the image, and we are taking there's an image component that is coming from next image. We can just import image here, which comes from next image. I think it was exported as default, so we can name it anyhow we want. So this is coming from next slash not link image. There you go. So here is the next image. So the thing about next image, it requires width needs to be passed and then the height. But let it not be misleading, because the width and height that you're passing, Next is just using it as a base height. But once you resize your screen, Next.js actually resizes it. That's what makes the image component from Next very beautiful. As you resize your component, Next is also resizing your image too behind the scenes as well. So let's get the image component in. The image component, there's the hero image that I just added. We're just going to import it. So this is the hero image. I don't think VS Code is that smart to know where this image is. I don't think so. I'm gonna say import hero image. And this hero image is coming from public. This hero image is coming from public slash hero image.svg. So now that we have these things are all, let's talk about the class. I will talk about the class later, but what is happening here is I'm setting the image. This is just an alt, so this is just for alt is just good for screen readers. So if someone is using a screen reader, they can know what is available there. So the image is going to start hidden, because I don't want the image to show up when the screen size is very small. The image is just a beautifying piece, which is just making it look beautiful. So if we don't have any more space, we just shouldn't show the image. So this is very similar to our Navbar. It starts hidden by default. The moment we get to MD, the image now shows up. So if I save this, we'll see whether the image is going to show up or not. In this case, the image doesn't show up, but as see, if I increase the size here, the image is now showing up now. So there is another problem, because you see now this is not going all the way, because it's still the size that we applied there, which we say that the grid template columns need to be 2 FR and 1 FR, is preventing this from going all the way. It's still the image space is still there, but it's not visible. So we do not want that. How did we solve this previously? We're just going to say grid columns 1. So by default, we're rendering inside 1, and the moment we hit MD, which is 760 pixel, 768 pixel, then we render both of them. That's where we now split it into 2 different spaces. That's why we have the 2 FR and 1 FR. So as I hit on save, you see it takes up the whole space. Now let's do that. There you go. Now the image is appearing very beautiful, because the screen size is bigger, right? We have no reason not to show the image. So yeah, now the image is gone. So the hero section is now done. If you have any question about it, feel free to leave a comment. I'll try to respond to every single comment, just to make sure that people understand what is going on. Yeah, that is the hero section. So let's move on to the next section. Hero section, we need to move on to the next part of the landing page. The next part is just the courses. So here is the popular courses. Let's go back to the demo. So if you were the one building this, you will have a design that you're gonna take a look from the design, assuming this was the design that you just get from the designer. Something that you notice is that 3 cards that are rendered per row. So we'll have to think through how do we render these 3 cards, just to make sure that they are rendered per space. Something else to consider is, as you move through here, you see if it doesn't fit anymore, it automatically reflows. So you see the text of popular courses also reduces. If you can see, the size also reduces once it gets to a certain screen. So we'll do that one by one. So how do we build this card? We are going to use grid, similar to, there are multiple ways to do this. One of the ways that we will implement it in these lessons here is through grid. But the other way is just with Flexbox. So Flexbox has flex and then uh, flex wrap, which just allows it if it doesn't have any more space, wrap it. So in this case, we're going to use flex grid. So we're going to use grid, and once we get to the other section, we'll use flex wrap, so you can know both, and then decide which one you need over the other. So let's create a new folder here called courses. So in this courses folder, we are going to create the courses that we are going to serve. So the reason why I'm creating it here, because we are going to reuse this when we're building other parts of the application. So I'll just type SFC, and then this will create a new component for me. I'm going to call this component courses. Inside these courses here, let's just render a div. This div that we are rendering, we can render another div inside it. So I have auto rename tag. That is, once I create a tag, it automatically renames it for me. So I'm gonna put an h1 here, where we will change this h1 later. So I'm just gonna call it courses here, just to make sure that we have everything. Oh, I did not spell that correctly. COURSES. So I'll save that. Let's go back to our landing page, and in our landing page here, we have the navbar, we have the hero. The next thing that we'll have is just the courses. So we'll just render the courses here. Yeah, let's do that. Let's have courses here, which just shows that, oh, these are the different courses. So let's just import that. There you go. So we should be able to see with an H. Oh no, this is the completed one. So let's come back to the line. We have these courses right here. There you go. Now we're all up and ready to build this. So let's go back to the courses. Within the courses, we are going to use one of the components. If you can see, we have a card. So that means that we are going to use one of the components from Shadcn, and one of them is card that we're going to use. So as usual, we have to copy this code, return back to our terminal. Within our terminal, let's stop this. Once we have this thing stopped, next thing is just copy and paste the code. So we just installing cat. While that is running in the background, you can put yes. That is done. So there are a few more Shadcn components that we use. So let's go back to the completed application. Here, as you can see, we're showing this batch here that tells us whether this code is a design course, whether it's a Next.js course, or whether it's a Spring Boot framework, or it's Express, and so on. So we need to install this batch here. So it's called batch. Let's go back to Shadcn. Come here, we have this batch here. So exactly, there you go. So we copy this code here as well, return back to our terminal, copy this code, return back to terminal, paste the same thing. That will install the batch for us. Now that we have the batch installed, we are all ready to go. So let's go back to our course. Since this is a section instead of a div, I'm going to rename this to a section. So we have a section instead of a div. That error is going to go away. Within this section, the text is also going to go away. So let's start with a few more stylings for the section. One of the first styles that we want it to be a flex container, for example. But yeah, we will come back to that later. For now, we don't need to style the let's have a div inside this section here. This div that we are having inside this section here is the one that is going to hold our cards. So why is this taking long to just install that from Shadcn? Did I mistaken it? Let me stop this and then run it again and see if so I think that should be right, because it should be very easy to add a batch in here. Yeah. Yes. So that's already installed. Let's kick the application back by running yarn dev. We have now the app running. So coming back to this section, because you see the cards and we are showing at least 3 cards per screen. The length, the width of each card is, from the design, it came as 520, and I want to maintain that 520 as far as they have space that is available for them. So without wasting more time, let's dive straight into coding. So I'm going to put this thing as grid. So if you remember, we talked about grid columns in, I think it was in the hero section. So in this case, let me put 3 here, but this is definitely not what we want. So I'm just going to put a bunch of divs here. 1. So I'm just going to duplicate this code here. Click on save. So if we go back to our e-learning platform, reload, so this will load from it. What is happening here? Let me close this so we can have a wider view of the screen. So I set this thing to grid, and then I set it to columns. What this means is divided into three separate. You see, we have three columns. You have this column here, we have this one. This is partially what we want, but not necessarily true. And if we want to do it like this, the reflow is going to be very difficult. Reflow in the sense that responsiveness is going to be very difficult, because what we have to do, if we keep it like this, we will have to have we'll have to have grid columns 1. That means it is 1, and then we have an MD to say that if the size is smaller, then in this case, let's put this thing as large. If it is large, then we want 3 size. If it is MD, we want 2. This is not good, because what is happening, our cards themselves, they are not going to reflow. So if I put grid columns 2 here, whatever that I'm saying, start with 1. If the screen size is small, put it like. If the screen size is medium, have 2 of them. If the screen size is large, have 3 of them. But this is not good, because these components that we have here are not going to automatically reflow. So there is a property from grid that we're going to use. The same thing from grid columns, but here we want to have more control over whatever that we're styling here. And what I meant by control is, remember how we put these square brackets, and within these square brackets we put the style. In this case, in this square bracket, we are going to take complete control of whatever style that we are putting here. So I'm going to put the we are using a function from grid called autofit and minmax. I'll just put the code and then just explain whatever that is happening. So the first thing that I want is, I want whatever that I'm putting here to repeat, and the first argument of that repeat is autofit. So I want it to autofit. But what do I want to autofit? I will now show you guys. So I put comma, and then I have the second parameter, which is the minmax. So I will explain this, guys, don't worry. And it's just beautiful how this is going to all turn out and then work very beautiful. So let's go through this line by line and just understand what is happening here. So grid template columns, right? I can let me just write this thing in what is CS. So let me hover over it and see if Tailwind is going to give me what this CS. I don't think the IntelliSense is that smart enough, but yes. So let's do something like this: display grid, and we also have grid template columns. So if you use the CSS, this is what is happening here: grid template columns. So inside these grid template columns, whatever that we have is what is. So we're saying repeat. So this repeat, remember how when we were doing the grid template column of 1FR, this is a way of, it's a faster way of not writing. If we want 1FR to repeat 3 times, we can put 3 and then 1FR. It means let this repeat itself 3 times, but for each of these 3 times, I want to have 1FR. In my case, I want it to be auto fit. It means let it automatically scale itself and fit inside. What does minmax does? So minmax it's a function. You can check it on the MDN website. So I can do minmax MDN, minmax grid MDN. So MDN is just the Mozilla documentation. So this is where they talk about minmax. You see, every one of the use cases, they even use it with grid. So you can learn more about the minmax. Sorry. You can learn more about the minmax functionality here and then what it does. So yes, this is from the MDN documentation, but what the minmax does is basically what math.minimum and math.maximum does. So we want the size to be 520 pixel, but if it doesn't fit the 520 pixel, we want it to auto. So what this auto fit does is, it takes the style from here. It takes whatever. There's another one called autofill. You can look that up too and just learn what the autofill does and the autofit. In my case, I find out that autofit was the best scenario for this. What does this do? We're setting the minmax, right, in between auto and 520 pixels. So it means initially it's going to be 520 pixels. Once we have it to 520 pixels, fit as many as you can to the screen with 520 pixels. So let's say if we have a screen width of 2000, pixel, we're going to fit in four of them, or we're going to fit in 5 depending on what we want. But looking at the map, seems like we're going to fit in 4 of them inside if we have 2000 pixel. That's what this is doing. But if it gets to a point that it cannot fit it, then it scales the component, it scales it down. This is when we are in mobile view and the size is less than 520. It shrinks the image down. It shrinks the card that we're going to input in so that it will fit in there. So I hope this part is now clear. Now that we have this, let me remove this guys here for explanation. I will save it and we will return back to our application and see what we're going to have here. In this case, we have every single thing here on one line. It's because we do not have a width for any of these. We do not specify a height for any of these guys. So that's why they just start getting filled in. This will be replaced with a card component that we will implement. Where is the card component coming from? Here is the card component. So we need to build a card component. We already installed card from Shadcn. So the first thing to do is just to come here inside courses. We need a card component. So I will call it course card. So it just represents the card. This just shows the cost. The reason why I'm getting this separation of concerns is because we are going to reuse this in the courses tab. But once you get to courses tab, we're showing a lot of them. So the courses card, let's get back to Shadcn. We're using the card component. So looking at this code here, let's take a look here. So the card component, you can import. These are the functions that you have a card header, and then a card content. If we get this from the designer, this is not we do not need a header here per se. But what do we need is an image. So what are we doing is we are rendering the card component that we are going to implement is from Shadcn. So whatever that I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back here in the card, and then I do SFC, then I call this course card. So this is the course card that we're doing. So these components are all coming from card, like I showed you guys. Here are components that are coming from card. So let's import these cards that are coming from Shadcn. So let's go back to Shadcn library. This is where the cards are coming from. Copy here for this card. And I think this is the only thing that we need here. Just come and paste the imports here. We'll go through this line by line. The first thing that we are rendering here, let me close this so that you guys can have more space to go to. I zoom in so that the code can be visible to anybody. So we need image from Next as well. So import image, import image from Next image, Next/image. There you go. But there is, as you can see, there's an image here that we're using. Right now, I'm hard coding the image, but once we connect this to a backend, everyone who is adding a course will have to upload an image for that particular course. So this course will cover everything. It will cover from uploading a new course, buying a new course, watching a new course, playing a new course, learning from it, and so on. So let's get the image from, if the course is up, the GitHub branch is going to be up, and once that GitHub is up, you can just go to that GitHub and then just copy the SVG files, then just paste it in your code. So I have it here. I'm just going to create the file here. I call it as a course image. So in this case, course image, it's a PNG for my case. It's not because I'm expecting to have PNGs. So let's do this. Let me get the image. Let me go to the folder, copy that image, and then just come paste it right in here. So at the beginning of the course, what you have to do is just go into the public directory, copy the image, and then just take it there. So it is course image. I copied the course image. I'm gonna come here to the public folder here. Then I'll just paste the image right in. So let's do this. We do not have it. I'm just going to drag the image here. It's called course image. There you go. Now I have the image here. So if I come back to this component here, I'm just going to import it. So I'm going to import, let me close the sidebar so we can have more space. I call it course image. So import course image from I think it's @/public, because that's why we have the images. Then we call it course image. There you go. Now that we have the course image, so this is the initial layout of the card component without anything. So we only show the image for the card. This is the card content. So the card content is where these two guys are gonna come inside. This guy and here. They also in the card count, and in the card footer, this is what is coming here. So this is a typical boilerplate that is coming from Shadcn, the image. Instead of the title or header, we are rendering the image here. As you can see, I give it a specific width, specific height, and by the way, the card also have a different background so that it can be visible, and that background is here. So it's setting the background color. I'm setting the card to the dark theme so that we can have all the text and others to white, so we don't have to, because the dark theme comes from Tailwind. It just inverts the colors. Basically, our website is also a dark theme. So we have a text of white. We have a width of full. Remember, see what we are setting here. We're setting it a max width, giving it a max width of 520. Whatever max width that we are giving it here is the same width that we set on the parent component where we will be rendering these cards there. So we have the card, we have the image, we have the card content. Now once we save this, and because we're going to be rendering a lot of these cards, so for now is we have to go back to our courses and then just try, instead of here, let's do one thing. Let's just try, because these cards are going to come from the back end, but for now we can do something like this. So if I do this arrays, I think it's array, and then I pass in 5, this will create 5. It will create an array with 5 items, and if I use the spread operator, I mean spread whatever elements that are coming from this array 5 inside this new array that I'm creating. So once we spread everything inside this new array, let's just look through it and then just print out, just render, not print, sorry. So I'll call this a course. I'll call this index for now because we are going to change this. Whatever that is happening here, we're rendering a cost card, and that cost card is just the card that we just implemented. Let me close this so that you guys can have more view, more visibility. Let's do this. Let me render here called cost card. Here, right here, it's just the cost card that we just created. So for React to be happy, let's give it a key. By the way, it's not a good idea to use this index as key because it doesn't play well with the re-render when React re-renders. So I'm gonna save this. Did we import the card inside the landing page? Maybe did we or we did not? Let's double check. Yes, we do have it here. So let me come back to the e-learning platform. You can see we now have the card here. So let me try to open it up. They are not getting the flow because the flex, how flex works, we are not rendering them inside. Yes, and that's another problem right there. Smiley at us. But yes, we'll come back to that. So they are not getting rendered in. We have to use flex. Let's use a class name here. Let's render the item. Let's do flex, flex column. Save that. We'll do that. We'll see if we need to add any more things. Let's see that loads. If that doesn't work, so and one thing else that we need to add, but we'll come back to that later. So flex column width. So what are we missing here? So we have a class name of grid. We have grid columns that we specify the number of columns that we want. Oh, there's a space here. So this is not expecting for space to appear right there, but that is not it. Let's debug together. This is interesting. It's live debugging. We're debugging while we are coding. So let me set the width here to the full. This would probably do the trick maybe. So if I set the width here to full, we want the width to take up the full space. So let me close this out. Oops, not pasting that. Let me close that out. So still not getting rendered. There's a problem somewhere else. Probably you already figured it out. Did I mistype anything? Grid columns, auto feed. Oh, there you go. I know some of you already caught this, but yes, I did type this incorrectly. This should be auto fill. If you type it and you caught it, bravo to you. You probably are saying the right thing, and I'm here struggling trying to find what the problem is. So yes, do we reload this? Because I think we install a component and reload. Yes, seems like there's still more problem. Let's dive deeper into it and see what's. Yes, here this is a problem because this should be an underscore that's separated. Hopefully that will be the problem. Once that is saved, we are still not seeing the right thing. what is the problem. Let me try to extend to a bigger screen, see what's up. Oh, there you go. Problem was solved. It's just because I was on a lower screen. But yes, we're only one source. But yes, problem is solved, but this is still not solving because what is happening is we do not have gap in between our items. So we need to add a gap in between the items. So the gap can be, I want to probably have different gap for X and Y, but let's just go with one gap for now. So if I do gap of 5, it's just giving it a gap of 5. So in this case, I'm going to have 5 in between, and that 5, I think it's let's see how many pixels that is. 20. So that 5 is 20. So as you can see, now we have beautiful gaps in between them. If I do this, it's like that. Something else that you notice, this is not centered, and we need to center this. And one way of centering this is just to use justify center. In this case, it will just center the items that are inside the main container here. I think it looks a lot more better when we center. Amazing. So as you see, we can go to, now it can fit only 3 because we give it that we need the maximum, not, we need it to auto fit, but fit as much as you can with 520 pixels. Now it's fitting. You see, as I go through, it's adding. So even if I change this number and then we render more items, it's still going to look amazing. So it's just going to render. You see, it renders 3 more items. If I open it up, you see it keeps on rendering. If I reduce the size, instead of 520, I reduce it to, let's say, 400, or I reduce it to 300, it's going to fit as much as it can within that available space. This is so beautiful because with just 2 lines of code, you have something that responds really well depending on the device size, because this, even if you go to lower device size, you will see how it responds on like smaller screen size. For example, let's do this and then go to an iPhone SE. So you can see the iPhone SE has a smaller width of 375, but see how well that responds on iPhone SE, an iPhone of a smaller size. If you put it as responsive, and you see it keeps on getting responsive. This is where the auto fit that we define comes into place. No matter how much we lower the screen down, we're still getting it to be fully responsive. You can see, and I think that is beautiful. FlexWrap can do it, but not up to the scale of this. You will have to write a lot more code for FlexWrap to work on this. Beautiful. Now that we have that one ready, the next thing that we need to do is just to go and fill in the content that we have. We also need to fix. We have a few things to fix here. So we want this guy to auto. So I think the height is fixed now. We don't want that. We want the height of. We will have to go back to the hero component. We want the height of this to be auto so that it can scale to as much space as we want. Because we put it as fixed, which is not good. That's why I usually prefer setting mean height instead of setting the height. So in this case, is the height of this guy here. What is happening? If we are medium, the height is this. Height is full. Height should be auto. I think the height should be auto, just to make sure that this automatically scales up and it takes up the right space that it wants. Let's see if that solves our problem. We still seems to have the problem. What is happening here? So MD height is equals to 564, which means if we're on a medium screen size, height is 6. Oh, okay, this is a bug that we need to fix. But as you can see, if we go anything below MD, it works really well. So we need to add a new breakpoint, and that breakpoint that we add, we can do it. Oh, we can put a gap in between. From these courses, we can put a margin top, but that is not good because if another developer comes in and add a new component here, that wouldn't work. So the best way is just to make our whole component reflow. So let's try height equals to full here and see what we're getting. So this is the hero component, guys. Don't forget the hero component that we just built a few minutes ago. It's not reflowing really well. It does reflow here when we, it's very responsive when we are, but there is a specific time when the things are structured. That's when it doesn't reflow. Also, I don't like that the text is so big. We should be able to reduce the size of this text when we are at a smaller screen size. For example, this text I think is so big, so we can just add in more styles here too. But we'll come back to this. Let's continue on our card component so that we don't get distracted on the card component, and we'll come back and fix whatever problem that we're having here. So returning to the card component, looking at the design here, there's a section here that is first divided into two. So what comes to your mind is just justify content. It's basically what comes into your mind first. Justify the flex and space between. So we can place a div here that we put space between so that it have these items here, and it can also put the other one here space between. So that's the first thing to do. So within the cart content here, right now it's empty. I will just put in the code of whatever that is running here, and we can go through it line by line. But whatever code that I'm putting here, we will have to explain every single part of it, so that it's not going to be just me dumping code at you guys. So you guys can think through. I'm just showing you my thought process of how I'm building this whole thing. Next time you want to build it, you will know the thought process of whatever that we're going through. So going back at the course card, the first section that I said that we're adding is this. So I will just copy this code and then just bring it right here in the interest of time, so that you guys don't have to watch me play all this. First thing is I'm going to import this. Batch it's a component, so it's not coming from Lucid Icon. Be careful, it's a component that we have, so make sure you import it from UI/batch. We also have a play, but this play button is an icon, so this is coming from Lucid Icons. So if I save that, I go back to our component that we're building, we should be able to see that showing up right here. Yes, we have that here. So what am I doing here? Let's start with that. This is what I first explained, is we need to have a flex and we need to have justified between. What is this justified doing? It's just separating them. We do not need to have paddings here because the cart component, the cart content already comes with padding. If there was no cart component, then we could have just applied a few more paddings here so that it can look exactly like it is on the design. Now that we have this other part here, it's also very simple. So I just created a div. Within this div, I have this play icon here, and the surrounding div, I just call it, just give it a width of full, give it a width of 8, give it a height of full, and then just make it rounded. So this is also another ways of placing items in the center. You can either use flex. So this is also equivalent to using 3 lines of flex, justify content center, align item center. I think this should be place items center, if I'm not mistaken, instead of place content. Or maybe they're interchangeable, so we can see the difference. Yes, I think it should be place item center. I'll have to look at the documentation for place content on MDN. But yes, this should be place items. Yeah. So here is just showing the number of lessons. All these guys are hard-coded. They will be changed. This 10 is now going to be changed to something completely different once we come to build. Once we are passing in here as a card, for example, as a props, and then changing it. So the next part is, let's go back to the design. The next part is just rendering this header here. So which is just basically one line of code. So I'm going to use the B tag. So immediately after here, I'll render the B tag. So let's go back here. So basically this is just block. It's an HTML of block. This is text. I'm just styling the text. So this is one way of styling. I can use text 11XL, which means takes it to 11XL. I think 11XL should be maybe 100 and something. I don't know, but yeah, you can just rename this 11XL. If you want something more specific, you can remove this 11XL, put square brackets, and then just say 100 pixel or 200 pixel, and that will work as well. If you are not comfortable with the XLs, and you can check on the Tailwind documentation on their website. I think you can see what this 11XL represents. Yeah, I was hoping sometimes if you hover over, like for example, when I hover over here, it works. But hovering over this doesn't work. Anyways, we don't have to waste time on that. So leading is just a way of just telling that to give the space, which is just the line height in between the text, and I just have it as inline block so that it can just reflows, go on to the next line. We have this. Now let's go back to the design and see what we are missing. Now we're missing this section. It tells you the person who developed the course, the name of the individual who developed the course, how many students are in the course. So that is the next section that we are building. So without just wasting time, in the interest of time, I'll put the code and then just explain whatever that is happening here. So here we need an avatar. Let me just import this avatar. So basically the avatar comes from Shadcn. So I don't know why so since we already we already installed the avatar component, avatar comes in from Shadcn avatar and then avatar image. So we have that one ready. Now let's explain the code here. The first thing that I'm doing is I'm adding a horizontal line here. So this is the first implementation, doesn't have the horizontal line, but I'm adding a horizontal line, and this horizontal line that I am adding, I'm just changing the color, give it a background of white, giving it a height. So height of 0. I think 0.5 is just 2 pixels. So that is just so. The next thing that we're doing is, this is very similar to the first part here, is whatever that we're showing here is we're putting it inside a div and we're putting the justified content to the space between. That's exactly what is happening here. We put it flex justified content of space between. Now we're going to have these two items that are gonna, one is going to show up here and the other one is going to show up at the very end. There's items of center, that's okay. Whatever these items of center is doing is just making so that these guys are centered. These two elements, they're centered in the middle here. And I have the height of full to make sure that it's going to take in the height of the parent of 98 pixels. The reason why I give it a specific height here, it's because if I don't give it a height, it's going to clip to the content. So what that means is, if the content is very small, it's going to clip in. If the content is very big, it is going to expand in size, and that's going to make our cards look very inconsistent. You will see one card is short, the other card is big. That's why I make sure I give it, this side has a specific height of 98 pixels, because I don't want to give the height to the parent component, because this is the only side, this is the only part of the card that can change depending on the name of the course that is being passed, and so on. These parts here remain the same thing. The image will remain the same here, also remains the same thing, unless someone have like 1,780,000 license, which is very unlikely. I know you don't make those kind of assumptions for when you're doing this, but the chances of that happening is very low. Let's go on to, let me save this, let's see how that looks like, see if we have that right. So what do we have? There you go, we have it right. So this part here is like Shadcn already have this component called avatar. If you go to avatar, this is directly from Shadcn that I copied. We are going to change this URL at some point when we have a backend already linked, and then this will be specific to that person. The last section of the card is just the footer. So inside the footer, we need a rating. So I built a rating component locally. Why did I do that? It's because where I check on Shadcn library, there's a promise that the rating component is going to come later, and I did not want to use the rating component from let's say MUI. It's a big library that I can I would just install a rating component. Some of the components that I see, they are not well maintained, so I don't feel comfortable using them. So I created my own rating component. So here is the code for the footer. But before I put the code for the footer, let me just explain what whatever that we're doing is very similar to what we're doing here. Flex, and then we split these things apart into using justified between. So you see that's what is happening. Flex, justified between, and then I'll put in this code here. So first button, we do have button, so I'm just going to import that. Button is coming from /component/button. So I'm just going to duplicate this import, come here, change this thing to button, because we already have this button. And instead of all these guys, I will remove it and then just do button. There you go, that part is ready. But we still have an error because the component, we do not have the rating component. Like I said, I implemented a very basic rating component, which for now is I make sure it can be read only. Not read only, I make sure that it can either be root only or someone can submit a review, because at the later part we'll have to touch the part where someone is submitting a review. So let's create a component called rating, and in this rating component, since this is something that I created from scratch, without wasting my time, I'll show you guys the code and then dive deeper into how that was implemented. So if you guys will need the feedback in the comment. What is more important, like writing through the code and then explaining the logic less, or just pasting the code right inside and then just explain whatever that is happening? I feel like if I spend more time explaining how I write something to you guys, it's gonna be easier if you guys want to do it again, instead of just me typing and then just explaining less. So that's why I think that's why I believe and then put it here. But it all depends, because at the end of the day, I'm making the course for you guys. Like, this is just the first part. There's going to be more and more and more courses where I will build fully flat. There are cases that I will build like 4 different applications. I'm also good at mobile app development too. So there's going to be React Native on the channel as well, where we will build complete mobile application should export. Yeah, I think that's taking us out of topic. Let's get back to topic. So what is happening here? I'm rendering. This is similar. If you can see, we're doing this before. We're just rendering. Before that, let's talk about the props here. What is the props? So the props is just three things. Sorry, we're taking the number, which is the rating. We're taking, is it read only and unread? So unread basically just takes in the number that the user rates it. That's if I click 4, 5, it just takes that and then it returns that function. What is this? What is this in TypeScript? So this is just destructuring. So basically, this is destructuring. If I have an object, if I say const, okay, I can't type. If I say const a equals, so then I have object. Let's say I have b. I give it a 1. Sorry, I give it 1. I have c. I give it 2, and so on. So what destructuring does is it allows me to do something like this: const, and then I put a here. So if I have a here, sorry, I'm just putting. If I have a here, this will allow me to put b here and then c. So what this is doing is I'm saying it go to this object called a, take a and b from it, take b and c from that. So right now this b is going to hold 1, this is going to hold c. So this is actually basic crash course of like destruction. I don't have to dive deeper. If you're more experienced, you probably know this. If you're not, sort of, I don't want to leave anybody behind. That's why I'm just going to explain every single thing. So here we're just destruction. Whatever object that we are passing contain these three things, and we said destructure those objects, and then so that we don't have to pass props and be doing props, that's rating and so on. You've seen this in other places that I've used. So yeah, next is we put in the class as flex. That is okay, so that it can render the in row format. Giving it flex by default renders it in row. How many of them are we rendering? 5, because rating is 5. So we're looping through an array. First parameter here that is getting returned from the array, we don't care, whatever that is there. Index, we do care, whatever that is in the index. So there is this logic here. We'll go through it. So mat.floor, what is mat.floor doing? It's just taking to make sure that we're grounding to the whole number. In this case, if we have 4.2, we round it up, it gets up 4. Right? If you have 4.7, we can round it up and it gets up whatever it is. So what we're doing, we want to check if we are going to render a half star. In my case here, everything that I am rendering here in localhost, you see the stars are different because here I'm generating these numbers here. So as we dive through the course deeper, we'll be generating some of this from faker.js. So that's why you see they have different. Like for example, this one have 4.5. That is where this half star is going to come into play. So what is happening here? I'm checking if the number is less than a whole number, then I'm rendering a whole star. So this star and half star, they come from Lucid Icon. Lucid Icon have a half star. And here is just filling the icons. I want it to be filled, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's read only. I put the cursor to default. Otherwise, I keep the pointer to cursor so that if it is read only, I will not be able to select and click. That's what this is doing. Then onClick is a typical onClick function. Once this is clicked, call whatever function that was called here for onRated. Oh, sorry guys, I mistakenly clicked. But yes, you guys have a sneak peek of what the other components are going to look like. And then here is a video component that we already integrated. But yes, I'm going to go back to the component. I mistakenly clicked that. Yes, so we have here now is where we are rendering the half star, if it is a half star. So in this case, if it is a half star, we are rendering this component. So this is star half. Whatever that is happening here is the same thing as whatever that we're doing here. So there's no difference. The only thing is the component, that's what differs here. There we're rendering half. Here we just rendering a star. What this is doing is, and the text is gray, this is for the areas that are not filled. So let's go back to here, for example. This is not filled, so that's why we render this component. Hope this this part of doing my local rating. I'm following the thread on Shadcn. Once a UI is available for rating, we can just come and replace the rating component. But yes, for now, since we already have it, let's return it. We already have it here. Import it. Click on save. A lot of these guys we don't need, so let's clean up. These guys are just, we don't need a card description. Hit on save. Let's go back to whatever project that we are building. So in this case, yes, there is a problem because one of the components needs interactivity, and which one of them? I guess some of you already guessed is the rating component, because it allows us to give ratings to a particular course. I know all of you guys will give me 100 rating because you're gonna learn a lot with me. So yes, we have that ready. Beautiful. Now we have these guys, but there is a problem. These guys are not getting justified content is not getting applied here. Let's see what the problem is. So they're not getting rendered in between. So we have a cat footer. Oh, we have multiple cat footer. Yes, that's a problem. So we're just going to remove this cat footer here, and then the problem should be solved now. Yay, problem solved. Now we have the cat component ready. It's nothing, so you can see, and it reflows really well. The responsiveness is amazing, very beautiful. Who doesn't like that? See how that responds. See how that is auto scaling. So beautiful. There you go. Now we have the discard ready, but there is other components that are missing. For example, the card has a title here, and this title, if we go back to the actual design, this is serving us as our design. The designer give us a title and say there's a title here called popular courses, so you need to do it. So what we're going to do, because this popular courses, this is something that I would have just implemented right away. Just put a div, put popular courses, but because I'm rendering this into multiple places and the title might change, here is popular courses, another place is going to be courses, we're going to render it. So when I look at the design tutorial, I realize, okay, this needs to be its own component. There's no way that I should mix this into just writing the code. That's going to help me with the code duplication. So I'm going to put course title here, course title.tsx. Once I have that course title.tsx, I'm just going to paste this code. Very simple. This component is very simple. So whatever I'm doing here is I'm just putting here, passing the title first. And once I have the title, I'm going to put course. So I'm taking this as props because this might or might not be available. So that's why I'm passing the title here as props. I mean, I make it available. So I don't know why I take that back for might not be available. So in this case, we will have our courses already defined. This is from, why did I do it? It's because I looked at the design, the entire design, and I noticed that there is here, one of places called popular courses, other places called recent courses, other place. So one thing that I noticed was changing is this, so I decided to pass that as props. Hope you guys get the thought process of why I did this over the other. The styling, we don't have to go through that. It's very simple style. We just have to put flex wrap. Now we're putting the flex wrap instead of grid. What does this do is, if our size, if the screen size becomes really small, the text wraps onto the next space. That's exactly what is happening here. Nothing else. So we just have to go back to our code that we're implementing, come back to these courses here. We need to render the title, but because this courses component is going to be used elsewhere, what we can do is we can go to the landing page directly. Instead of rendering the courses here, we can render a div here, which is basically represent the courses. Or we could have also rendered a React fragment as well. Let's see if we need it. What do we need first? It's just the course title that we just have. C course title, and there's one thing that the course title needs, which is title. So in this case, we can just hard code the title here directly and just put it popular. Save it and see what we get here. So what do we get? There you go. We have this popular here, but there's no space in between these two. So let's style our div here. If we style this div, let's give it a flex and then give it a gap of 5. In this case, it's just going to give us a horizontal gap of 20 pixels in between these guys. Whoa, what is happening? Oh, okay, yes, this makes sense. I guess some of you should now be able to guess. It's because we put in a flex and we allow flex is row by default. So we need to change this to flex column. And yes, problem will be solved. So once we change this to flex column, there you go, problem solved. So if you go back here, everything is still responsive. It doesn't go, the size also goes bigger. So I think by this time you guys should be familiar with how the resizing of size works. So if I go back here, it's the same thing as the other one. So I'm saying that it should be text 4XL by default. This means that if it is 4XL by default, if the pixel is 0 pixel, if the width is 0 pixel, this is what is going to apply. As you keep on scaling it up, in our case, we says that if the size is small has a specific with that Tailwind apply. In this case, small is 640 pixel. If we're at 640 pixel, increase the size to 5 XL. If we're at medium, increase the size to 6 XL. There's another way to also add here to say that if we are at, instead of mid, I think there's another breakpoint called large, then give it 10 XL, for example. Leading is, yeah, that's basically how the responsiveness of text. So this is the same way we can apply it. This is why Tailwind is so beautiful, because we would have write a lot of this code. We would have had a CSS file and write this, I wouldn't call it garbage, but too much lines of code. We'll say, oh, media queries, put minimum width of 640, blah, 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 and so on. But with Tailwind, it's just so beautiful. You put small, it just applies this, guys. That's just amazing. Yeah, I think that's everything about courses. We have courses ready. Right now, I'm just not going to link. There's one thing else that we can add that I know some of you guys already saw, but it's optional. If I come back to here, this course is here. If I hover, oh, not clicking on it, sorry. I showed you guys this thing, but yes. If I hover over it, notice what is happening. The course is scaling up. How did we do that? How did we achieve that? So the styling for this is very simple. All what we have to do is just to add shadow. So shadow, it's a CSS, it's a class that this guy sort of, we're putting it on the card component, not here. So inside the card component, the parent class, so we are putting shadow equals to large, so we're giving it a large shadow. The other thing that we're doing is we want it to be transformed. So we're just going to put TRANSFORM. So we say that transform it, and the other one is the transition. So this transition is basically the transition that you have in a normal. We are not putting that. So we put in transition, we want it to be transformed. And then the last part of it is just hover. Once we hover over it, so this is just a pseudo selection for hover. If we hover over it, we want to scale the class. We want to scale it to 1 of 5, for example. This is very optional. If you want to do it, if you want, don't do it. I think it's just fancy. You add it. I don't think it brings, I wouldn't say it brings a lot of value, but see, as I hover over it, it changes. So I hover over it, it changes. But before we go further, we need to fix this problem here. And I'm assuming that this problem is coming from these guys here. And this component is the hover component. So let's go back to the hero section and then fix this guy. So let's check what is the parent component for hero. So hero component height, it gives it as full. It gives this guy, yes, we want this guy. We also want this guy. So let's see if this guy has a fixed height, if it's the one that is causing. Well, so let me just do this so we can read properly. So we are saying that we want the height at MD to be 650 pixels. So is this MD? Yes, this is MD. This is our guy. This is our problem. So instead of MD, giving it a specific height, I think we need to change this and put it to large instead of MD, so that we know that when we are at large, we know that this is going to fix. It's going to scale. So let me put LG here. I think it's the next breakpoint. So hopefully this is going to solve the problem. There you go. Beautiful. That solves the problem. But yeah, let's make sure that whatever that we have before is not broken. There you go. Now we are at large. We have the fix there. The moment we get to that, you see now the height is auto. So it keeps on automatically. That's where this height of auto comes into play. Beautiful. We fixed that problem. Now, without wasting much time, let's get on to the next part of the landing page. Yeah, let's dive on to the next part. So as you can see on my screen, the next part is we're just showing here, which is basically it's just showing us the stats that we have and why people should actually get my courses, because I plan on doing full courses. Like I said, this is my personal website that I'm building to sell some of my courses, and we are going to be showing this course live to this website will be live, and the code will be 100% open source. Yeah, so this is the code that the website that I'll be using to sell my course. I'll show you guys how I build this from scratch up. So this is the next part. It's just telling you why my courses are going to help you, and I think maybe some of you guys have already seen it. If not, leave a comment in the comment section on what I'm not doing right or something that I should improve on. I'm happy to do that. One of it is my thought process is unveiled. I noticed that when I was learning from YouTube, sometimes most of the this is when I was going to school. So I graduated from the Guild University with a bachelor's of software engineering, and I work right now full time. There's a thought process unveiled. This is when I show you what my thought process is, how I think or how I approach a problem when I get a design. When we get to the back end, I will also be showing you design documents on how I'm thinking. Why do I want to go with this approach over another approach? So that's basically this section. It's just telling you like I have a tailored learning path. There's going to be community and support. So something else that we need to do before we get into this section, we need to go back to Shadcn. If you notice, this is the component that we're using here, so that it can be expanded. Let's install this component first. So we have to come in here, stop whatever that is running, paste. You can stop it with Control-C, and yeah, we can paste this to install this library for us. So you can install this component. So we already have the library installed. So we are going to create a new folder, not inside hero, but inside component. Click on components, click here to create, we're going to call it selling point. So which means this represents like the selling point of the course, is why people should buy the course over another. So inside here we'll have a file called sellingpoint.tsx. Sellingpoint.tsx. Looking at the design here, there's few more things that we also need. So let me go back to the completed one. Just create next app. Here is the completed one. If you notice, if I unveil it, there's also a stats component here. This stats component, it's also telling you how many students are actually how many students are registered, how many students are in this course. So and also not in this course, but how many videos in general are on my website, how many students are in, how many users. So to avoid code duplication, let's create a new file called stats, and inside this stats is where we are going to create this. So inside this stat is where we're going to create stat.tsx. So yeah, now without wasting much time, like I've done in other sections, I'll just bring the code right in and explain whatever that is happening line to line. So you guys can also be able to implement it yourself. But let's go through this before we even bring any code. How will I approach this when I have this component to build? How will I build this component? First thing that we notice is these guys are separated into 3 different screens, right? What is happening? One way that we could do this, if you guys remember, we can use grid and say that this is 2FR, this is 1FR, and this is 1FR. It means this guy will take twice as much as this space. Whatever that is happening here, split the other half of it, split the space between these two. Is that what we really want here? No. Looking at the design, this guy is bigger, this guy is also bigger than this guy, so we cannot just say this one is 2FR, 1FR, 1FR. That's not gonna work really well. So yeah, we can also say, some will argue that this is 2FR, this could be 1FR, this could be 0.5FR. Yes, like, because all these FRs behind the scene grid makes sure that it adds up to 100, like the percentages. But still that doesn't work, because as you try to do reflow and others, it doesn't work. So in this particular case where there are different sizes of the width, this is where flex really shines in. So we're going to use flex, and we have a container of flex wrap. That means as we squeeze the screen down, it's going to wrap in the sense that it will go up to the next part of the screen. So see what is happening here. If I do this, guys, they still have space, so they'll fit in. The moment they don't have space, this is the first guy that doesn't have space, it wraps up to the next space. As I go through this guy also wraps up too. It also goes to the next space. So if I go to a size, I don't need the image anymore, because these are the lower screen size. What's the point of showing that image? Then I mark that image as hidden. So we will go through that. So let me first bring out the code for the selling point, and I will just explain. There's nothing out of the ordinary, but before, let's start with the start component. So the start component is very easy. So that one, it's a lot more easier to actually explain. Then we dive deeper into the bigger one. So what is the start doing? Looking at the start component here, we have an icon here, and then we have 2 texts here. These 2 texts, they're centered in the middle. We have a text with number, and here is just the videos. They're centered in the middle of this container that we have here. So the first thing to do is, I'm just say that this is flex, and then I put items of center. Then I give it a height. Whatever this height is, I'm just giving it a height of the whole width and say that I want this height to be 54 pixels. So if I put a background column, you'll see that the height is exactly 56 pixels. 56, 54, one of them. I don't know. 56, yes. So I rendered the icon, which makes sense. So I have the icon on this side. Because this is flex, so they will be rendered in row by default. That's why this row guys comes into play. Then I have a space of X. This could also be replaced with gap. So I say I need space on the X axis. I need space of 4, right? So if I hover over it, this is the what is applying. Space of 4 is just applying. So margin left, margin right, whatever. This could also be replaced by gap, by the way. I can also say gap equals 5, and I'll get this gap in between these items here. So that's why flex. I think the spaces were used maybe before flex added gap. I think flex recently added gap. Don't quote me on that. What is next now? Next is just these two guys that we are rendering next to each other. Because we say items equals center, anything that we put inside this container will be centered. That is why these guys are here already centered. So we just wrap it inside a div and then just render these two elements. Here is just the basic styling of the text. This is completely up to you. You can do this anyhow you want. Here I'm also giving it a text of small. This is also coming from Tailwind. I think text small is applying 14 pixel, line height of 20 pixel. Here it's complete control. You can do whatever. I'm not going to dive deeper into this because if you're building your website, this depends on whatever that is on the design. Just copy it from there right there. Now we have the stats component. We save it. The next component, but because this stats component, this stats are coming from, they will all be coming from the backend. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a constant which is going to have these informations for now. Later on we will change we'll change it once we get to the backend. So I define a stats. Inside here I give it an ID. Why do I need this ID? Because when you're rendering, React needs an ID so that it doesn't render things that are not necessary. I think this is already added, so I'm just going to replace this with components, UI, and then a custom, because we already added. Did I not press yes? I did not press yes. That's why TypeScript never lies. It always helps me type those box. That's why I love it. Yeah, so we have this, and within here, these selling points, they do have a text as well. So you see each of these selling points have a text. So what we have to do is just to render, yes, that's also a problem that I just noticed now, and we'll fix it, guys, don't worry. So as you expand on this text, you notice that there is it renders a title, it also renders like the body of that text. So we are going to go to constants, the same place that we define, I think, the constants for our navbar. Here, since these constants are going to global constants, so that's the same place. So we are going to constants here, and then add a new constant. In this case, the constant that we add is basically whatever that we are rendering there, just to make sure that we don't duplicate the code, and there's going to be one source of truth if we are making any changes to this constant. So the constant is simple, very similar to the navbar. The only difference is this has a lot more properties. So I'm just going to put the constant here. What are we doing? What am I doing in the constant? I'm just declaring an array and just give it a type. I need an ID, title, and the body. Here is the title. You see, multi-framework mystery, and then the body is whatever that we're showing inside here. I'll save this guy. I'll return back to. I feel like there's nothing to explain there. I'll return back here and try to explain what is going on here. So there is this image. I don't think we have this image, so we'll have to. Do we have that image? Let me click here on next. No, we do not have this image, so we'll have to add the start image. I don't know why TypeScript is not yelling at me, but yes, here is where flex will now come into play. Like I explained, I give it a flex class of flex, justified between. The only difference that we are adding here is this guy, and it's the one that is doing the trick. It is the one wrap, like the English word says, wrap it. Once we get to there's no more space, but this guy will maintain the space that it have. And I give it a space because the width is full, but I just said stop at 690. And at this point, some of you guys should be familiar with this. We just give it a space, mat. If I do this, it means mat.minimum between this guy and the width of 4. So nothing to explain that again. So we have this while we render the title, and this acasson is what is coming from Shadcn. So we're rendering a custom item, nothing out of it. We're putting it to multiple. The reason why I put type of multiple so that multiple items can be expanded. So if I put this into single, only one can be expanded at a time, just to make sure that we don't go out of space. For example, if I change this guy to single, only one of them will be rendered at a time. So for the image, before going further, if you're here, you can just check out this very branch. The start image is just an SVG file. I'm gonna go to the public folder. Yes, we do not have the start image. So I will create a new called start image.svg. SVGs are beautiful to work with because they're very responsive. So I'll just save the start image. If I come back to the selling point, what else do I need to explain? Stats. Yes, I need to explain the stats. Stats is basically, let me do this. It's also simple. So it's just center whatever that is inside the container. Flex column, this should be familiar now. Gap of 10, padding of 10, items of center, which means render it in the middle. So I'll save this, and we will now go back here and then render the we will go back to our landing page and then render it. So immediately after this course, we will render the, what do we call it again, selling point, which is the selling point of our application, why people should buy our courses. I will save it. Let's come back to our application and see what do we get. Hoping that this should be rendered shortly. Oh yeah, after I install, I did not run, so I have to run again. It's a common problem that I face. I really forget to run it again. But yes, we have the, while that is running, so we wait to see what is on the screen. Let's go back to create React app to see what is next. So next is just the testimonial section. So we'll have to install the testimonial site. We're going to use an external library for this. So there are two options. One of them is Swiper.js, and there's also Spider. But I think Swiper is such a heavy library. Not that heavy, but in my particular use case, I decided not to go with Swiper. But it's usually the standard. There are a lot of people. Let's come back here and see, yes, we have it. Everything is beautiful. Let me explain the image section, how I also hide the image. But if you're following the other section, you should be able to hide the image now. So if I go back to the image here, I said it's hidden by default, and the moment we're at large, show it up. So even if you're at medium, we're not showing that. The moment we get to large, that's it. The image is back again. See, that image is back, and then it is beautifully spaced. What is next? What do we need to do next? Now that we have that, so I was talking about the difference between Swiper.js. Swiper.js is amazing. It's amazing. I have nothing against the library, but I think it's just super big. Here is Swiper.js, very beautiful library. But in my use case, it's super big. I only need it to show that particular case, so I don't need it for any other use case. So if you're building an e-commerce or anything else, I would recommend this. But whatever that I'm using is called Spider.js, very lightweight. When I looked at their documentation and whatever that they're doing, it's amazing. So let me get the exact name. I don't know whether it was Spider, but it came up from my investigation on which of these guys to use, because building it from scratch is also, I did not see the point of doing that as well. So let me go back to our landing page. It's in here. There should be, yes, it's here, testimonial. So the library, it's called Spline, React Spline. It's a very lightweight library. So let's look it up here. Spline/React. So here is the library that we'll be using, and here is their documentation. Very lightweight, very lightweight, very fast. This is just how you import it for a React component, React.js, and then just import the styles, and you should be good. So that is the next section. Let's move on to the next section, considering we have this part done. So let me just show you guys that this is working fully. It's working amazing. So I am not going to fix this part. I would love someone to fix this part and then just show, well, how did it work? This was not working. Well, miracles happen, right? For some reason, after I expanded on these guys, it was showing up, and I said we will come back to fix it. So I wanted not to fix it and have you guys just fix that in the comment, but Miraculously, it's working. I don't know what is happening, but yes, it did work. So we're not going to go back to it. Let's get to the next section, which is what is the next section? So the next section is just building this testimonials site. So this testimonial site, let's create a section. Why am I saying site? Testimonial section. Let's create a new folder here called testimonials. So one thing that is going to be testimonials, testimonials, past tense, plural, I don't know, whatever. So we're going to have three components. So we're going to have the swiper component, which is going to get that swiper that I talked about. We are also going to have another component called testimonials, so which is going to be the base components that we are going to export and import. So testimonials.tsx, and we are also going to have another one, that card. We're going to have that card, so it's going to be testimonial card. Testimonial card. Oops. Testimonial card.tsx. So this testimonial card is just going to hold the card that we are building. But first and foremost, let's start with the swiper.js. So let's go back to the documentation. Here is the command that we need to run to install it. So let's go back to our terminal. Stop whatever that is running with Control-C. Run that to install this swiper/slide. So first thing to do is just to import it. So there's a bug that, not a bug, but it's complaining because it couldn't find it. So I just did not have time to actually look up their specific types and install the types. I did not do that. So all I do is just ignore it for now, because it's just TypeScript that is complaining because it did not find the types for this. Usually you can do import, if you want, you can just import npm I save types, whatever, so you can get the type of this, or you can look it up. You can just Google it up. I'm not going to do that because I'm just using a very basic functionality of the swiper, so I did not care much about that. Other than that, the code for the swiper is very, very, very simple code. So we are just going to do one thing. Let's have your sfc, which creates a new component for us. We call it swiper. So this is our base component for swipe, and then we render that swiper that we just have. Testimonial card, we'll come back to it. So let's go through the code of swiper. This is very simple. Whatever I did, I just copied it directly from the documentation. Have it here, except this guys. I have to look these guys a little bit down. So when I get to the documentation, they told me that there's an option, so I have to go and look for that option, so wherever that option is defined, and just extract it, whatever that I need. If you want something more, I think if I search for option, I don't know if this is how I found it or something else, but yes, I think this is the option. Yes, this is the option. So there are so many properties that are in option that you can apply. So I just go through this documentation and then just use the one that I want specifically. You can go through swiper.js.com and then check the options and then just pick anyone. For me, the only two options that I want is I want the type to be loop and I want it to autoplay automatically. There's something else that you guys can also take in as a challenge to go and look for one of the properties that within the Swiper.js website, because this is a good skill to have as a software engineer, being able to read documentation, grasp whatever that is in the documentation, and do what you want to do with it. Senior engineers, beginners, one thing that's going to make you strong engineers, knowing how to navigate around documentation. So go into the documentation, look for the autoplay time, because right now it looks a little bit long on me, so that you can reduce it and then it goes a little bit faster. Those are things that you can play with. But yes, that's what it does. Copy it directly from the documentation. This is the testimonial card that we are going to implement next. So for now is we don't have the testimonial card. I already created the file for the testimonial card, but the testimonial card is nothing different from all the other cards that we created. So we created other cards that are very similar. For example, the one for card. So let's go in here. So some of these things should be very familiar to you. We have the card component, which is coming from Shadcn. We have the card header, also comes from Shadcn. In this case, we need the header. If I go back to the demo, there's a header this is the header that we're using to show the name of the developer and then the average ratings that is that someone has given to that developer. because these are ratings that are related to a particular developer. Here, nothing out of the ordinary. Flex, justify between. We're used to this. We're seeing this. So, by the way, if some of you guys are more experienced in CSS, if there's a better way of doing it, please leave it in the comment. I'll have to make sure I go through every single comment. If there's a better way of doing it, leave it in the comment. So I have here flex and I have justified between. So this justified between just to make sure that the rating and whatever I'm rendering here, they're shown in between. Also, one way, these guys, we've been rendering it a lot, so it's going to be good to actually abstract this into its own component. But I think in the card section, we have something like this. So it's good to just extract this into its own component so we have one source of truth. Any place that we are modifying, we modify. The next one is we have a line, which is just separating them. Then we have the card content. That's it. Nothing out of the order. In the card content, I just give it a padding top. So in this case, we have the testimonials. I will save this. So if I come back to the testimonial card, I'll do that. Then we have that guy ready. So what is remaining for the testimonial section to be complete is just the testimonial itself. Oh, I put this in wrong. Some of you guys already caught it. Thank you for that. This should be in the testimonial card. Oh, okay. I messed up big time. Because the swiper, this should be in the swiper, not here. So this guy should be here, swiper, because that's the one that is holding the swiper. The testimonial card, I'm also going to cut it as well because it doesn't live here. It should be inside here, testimonial card. So, but I already explained what is in this code. So swiper, what are you doing? You need to import from testimonial card. Yes, that was about doing to fix that. Yes, so what is remaining is just testimonial. Whatever that is happening in the testimonial is just, we're just looping through to just render our swiper. But because we have a header, so we're going to do that for the header. So here we just import our swiper, and inside that we just have a div where we just render this testimonial, make sure that it is centered, and we render this swiper. So within this swiper, this is why we are looping and rendering 6 of them. I'll save this. We will go back to the landing page and we are just going to render the testimonial. We are almost done. So we'll just render the testimonial and let's go back to our app. If you scroll down, hopefully, let's see, I hope I have it running. Yes, always it gets me. Anytime I install something, it gets me big time. Yes, so we hoping that, let's hope that it's going to solve this time and see while that is loading without wasting time. Let's check what is next. So what is next for us is this section. This is a very super simple section. So let me do this. This is a very super simple section. We just have a text on this side and we have this is where I like justify. We just have a div justify between. This guy will be here and this guy over here. So it's a very simple component. Let's also dive straight into it. So while that was loading, before we talk about moving, let's check if the testimonial. Amazing, we now have the testimonial component. You can see I can move through it and it also loops. There you go. That is beautiful. Amazing. So the next section is why someone would want to join someone should join the platform or not. So we can create inside component, click on component, create a folder here called join platform. Now let's do the other way of creating so that you guys can also, it's faster way. You come here, create a file. Inside a file, you call it join platform. Once you have the join platform, you say slash task, and then you put another join platform here .tsx. So here it will automatically, it's a faster way of creating a file. Here it will automatically create that folder for you. It will create the join platform and then put it for you. So join platform, it's a lot more simple. Here we are not installing anything from any of Shadcn. Whatever that we're using, we already have it. So let me dive deeper into it. Like I explained before, this could be flex. And exactly that's what happened. I use flex, but because I want this guy here, look in here, I want this guy to be bigger, right? And then this guy will take small. I don't know what is this guy. So I want the first text to be bigger, and then the second text here to show, because we're just showing two different buttons here. So that's why I'm doing. First one is just a typical flex box. Justify, oh, now I use justify even instead of justify between. So in this case, because when I got the design, the text was somewhere centered, but there's still space in between. That's why I use justify event in this case, not between. Because if I use justify between, what is happening is if you go back, look at where this guy starts and look at where he starts, because this is exactly as it was on the design. Justify content space between wouldn't look beautiful here because you'll have this text here, then you have these buttons here all the way at the end. So this is why justify evenly comes into place. That's also around as well, why you can space it around. Around just gives it equal space. Play with it. Like if you change this to justify around, see what it looks like. Flex wrap, you're already familiar with this. If there is no more space, wrap this element onto the next line. Gap is 5. Put a gap of 5 pixel. Sorry, gap 5, not exact. I think this 20 pixel. Exact. Put a gap of 20 pixel in between these two. This gap is going to be useful when we wrap the items. Right now, because we're using space evenly, it has no effect here. But as you can see, if I do that, then the gap is now going to have an effect here. So you can see here the gap is now having effect. Something that I noticed here is the line height is so big at a smaller screen size. So that is something that we can fix. So within the text here, there is a line height here leading. So what I would do is I'm going to have line height to be 40 by default, 40 pixel. So let's do this thing to 40 pixel by default. 40 pixel at MD and bigger screen sizes, put it to 60 so that this will bring the line size, because we don't need all this extra space in between there. So let's see how that is going to turn into. Oops, I am on the different one. So what is happening? Did we have a bug? Yeah, something else is going on, but yes, let me reload this and see what is happening here. There is a problem. Class extended value is not a constructor. Oh no, what are we doing? This is say server components class or constructor unhandled error. So we are going to be handling these errors later, but let me restart this and see if that is going to, because sometimes next you have to restart these guys multiple times. If this doesn't handle it, then we can dive deeper and then just debug and see whatever problem. If you already solved it, if you don't have the problem or you already found the problem, kudos to you. Do we have any interactivity for component that we need to put a client component? Let's see while that is trying to load. This should be testimonial card. Does this show the rating? Yes, it does show the rating. Oh, okay. This is getting interesting. It's not telling me React Sprite. Turns out to be the problem. The error happened while generating the page. Any console. What I'm going to do is sometimes Next error can have the issues. So I'm gonna come here, delete the Next.js folder so that we are not getting anything from cache. I will restart this and then run it again. Hopefully now it's going to solve the problem. If it doesn't solve the problem, we will dive deeper and see what the issue is exactly. So this is a typical development workflow where not everything works that smoothly. So you have to have hiccups here and there, but the problem seems to be coming from React Sprite. Do I need to put the testimonial component as client component because I'm using Sprite? I think so. Here, let's do this. This could be our guide. So let's say use client. This error message isn't that clear compared to the other error messages that tells you that this guy is not working correctly. So while we wait for these guys to come, compiling, fast, wait to load. Yes, so there's still some issues here, but it did load our component. We can dive deeper course. Top level, each email list should have a key props. There you go. I think I found what the problem is. So inside here, this testimonial that we are rendering, we need to pass in a key props here. So this is what React is not happy with, so that it doesn't render this component multiple times. But now that we have the key here, the problem is all gone. Goodbye problem. So let's see if the text that we reduce, what is happening? Oh, okay, makes sense. We did not import the styles for for it. So we need the style for the testimonial section. I see. So what we have to do is you go to swiper.js. For React, they have a style for it. So I'll just save you guys time and just show you what the import is. So basically, wherever we have the testimonial, there is a CSS that we need to import from style. So right now, it's not applying any of the CSS from these guys. So we go to Sprite here. We need the CSS here, so I'll just put import. So here, this is just importing the CSS so that it styles up it properly. This is the only CSS that we need here, I guess. There you go. But why did it even work in the first place? That was magical. Yeah, so we have it now. You see everything is working. Ready. Next part of it is the join platform. Join platform, I think we already did join platform. Did we not do it? Let's go back to landing page. I think we already rendered join platform. Testimonial, no, we did not. So we just implemented. So let's do join platform. Save. Scroll down. I expect join platform to now show because I'm rendering it inside here. There you go. I'm rendering it inside here. Now it looks beautiful. This is just one way I'm centering. If you want, you can wrap another div when it's in the middle. You don't center it so that you can put a space between. One button will be here, the other button will be there. It depends on your choice, whatever. I think I'm okay with leaving them like centered in the middle. You can, yeah. This is your choice. So now this is, let's see how this guys reflows. Very well. It does reflow really well. So you see, beautiful, amazing. Some point that's here. Then we have these two items that are rendered and they are at the beginning. So this is looking amazing. It's looking beautiful. The leading that we applied is now showing up here. You see, we can also increase this leading so it can give more space. So the leading is just the line height. Where are you? Let me close this so I can read this guy properly. We put you 40 here. This guy's, let's say I put 50 pixels here instead. What was the initial one? 60. So let's see how this guy is going to change. You see, it puts more space. I think it's more readable like this. So I'll leave it as 50. Your choice. Do whatever you want to do with it. Change the styles, change anything, anyhow you want it. So we have now the last section, which is the footer. Footer is also a lot more easier. So you see, I'm context switching between grid and wait. Oh, this is the component that I got because I did not expect to see the footer there. I did not do anything about the footer. So footer is basically I have a text here which is going to replace a logo. I have some quick links and there are some fake emails and text and so on, and there's a location here that we can get. So here are the basics. Like basically the quick links is the same thing. You can click dashboard, courses, and so on to just switch. So for the footer, if I have a design like this, how am I going to do it? What is going to be the thought process? Well, I'm going to split it into 4 different spaces. 4 different. So what first comes to my mind, and I want them to be equally spaced. What is the first thing that comes to my mind? Oh, you can use grid layout to do it. Either flexbox can also work and wrap it, but in that case, for flexbox to work, I need to manually give the width for each of these guys, right? If there is, yeah. Other than that is let's dive straight into the footer component and then just implement it. Yes, I am going to use grid, and within the grid is going to be similar to what we did for the card component. In the card component, remember where we put the auto fit, we scale it down to here. We scale this down to, let's say we want each of them to be 520 pixels. If you remember, 520, yes, for the cards. Here also we're going to do that just to split it and make sure that it fits in 4. As I reflow, let's see, as I resize my browser also, you see, then this location guide just reflows. Next time is to get in touch. See, as you keep doing, then that's the logo comes up, then all the other guys reflow. So this is one challenge that you guys also can do on the side. Try to make sure that this header for the quick links is rendered here, and these guys are also rendered right below it. That's one way to do it. Or you also render this guy to be in the middle so that there is going to be consistency. I think this guy is going to be a lot more easier, but challenge yourself in either ways. Either render this guy in the middle here, or just bring these quick links items here so that they reflect. I'm not going to do it in the tutorial. This is something that you can do on your own on the side. So just to make sure that you understand it. If you have a solution for it, please leave in the comment section below how you solve this last part of the tutorial. So footer is simple. I already explained. I'm not gonna go dive deeper into. So let's just create a new folder. Click on components here. I just show you the new way of creating it. I'll have footer slash footer.tsx. Footer.tsx. So here I'm just going to paste in the code for footer, and I'll explain it. It's very simple. What do I do here is first HR, very simple, add a horizontal line. And once I have the horizontal line in place, I could have just put a React fragment, but then once we put this component inside the landing page, then it's going to treat them as two separate components, because the React fragment just happened. That's why I have a div, so that it will treat this as one component and paddings will be applied correctly. What is next? We have this grid here. So I have a feeling that I already explained this, so I'm not going to go dive deeper into it again. So we have this guy. This guy is the one that is doing the secret. Our friend here is putting auto fit, and we have the min max as usual. Oops, did I mess up? We have the min max here. Auto as usual, 350 pixels. So I want each of them to be 350 pixels. Fit 350 pixels as much as you can until we don't have any space any further to fit many. Once that is done, then I know that I'm gonna fix it, and I start putting the different ones that I need. In this case, there's 4 of them. This is part of the code that you can also clean up too, because if you notice one thing, every single component have one thing in common. That is, they have this logo. Okay, they're not a logo. They have a title here. Within the title body, they have a text. So this is something that is common in all this. One of the challenge for you would be just to create a small component. You call it like footer component. Give it any name you want, any name that is very descriptive, and implement this component. Then pass these guys down as prop. Pass this guy as a children. Pass these guys as children. Pass these guys as children, and just have the header. So for now, I just copied the same thing and pasted. I didn't care too much because I wanted you guys to actually clean this part of the code. So yeah. Not doing anything, just basically putting flex. As you can see, these guys are copy paste. And one of my teachers, when I was doing software engineering, said, if you find yourself copying and pasting code, you're doing something wrong. Anytime you copy code, you paste, you copy code, you paste, think twice, you're doing something wrong. That is a repetition. That is something that you can extract into a function that is reusable. And that's what I was doing. All these guys, I was copying and paste. If you copy and paste, stop and say, wait, why am I copying this code and pasting that? Give it a second thought. Copy paste, you can do better. Extract it into a function so you don't have to copy paste. That's the same situation. Extract this guy into a component so that when you go to code reviews, whatever, you will spend less time there. People know that you know what you're doing. Ta-da! Next part. Simple. We're done. I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna come back to the page. So inside this page, I'll just render the footer. Yay! This is the final part of the landing page. But there's more to come. There's gonna be more and more courses. We're going to build every single part of this course, not just this guy. So footer is coming from component/footer. What do we need for the footer? The footer takes in links. That's okay. We will dive deeper into it. So here I'm just gonna call it Navbar items so that it renders this item. But the reason why we're passing them down as props, because later when we are rendering from the server, we'll pass in down some of these things that are accessible to only depending on user. For example, a dashboard should not be accessible to somebody who is not an instructor, for example, or someone who is not depends, whatever. So yes, we have this guy, save. Now let's go back here, open this guy, ta-da, problem solved, we're done, everything is fixed. There is a problem because we need a padding around this component. So I can do the padding either in here, or I'm going to do the padding in the parent component, so that if we add any other component below this guy, we don't have to do any padding. Not very unusual though. If you put a footer, you don't add anything, but it's a good behavior to come to this guy that is rendering here and then just put a padding bottom. Let me just put a padding bottom of 10 here. Oops, that should be lowercase. So ideally this is good, because then you don't have to come back to if you add more components below it, you don't care about adding, because this guy is already the padding button. There you go. Now we have the padding button. Every single part of the landing page is done. So if you're new here or if you stayed until to the last part, thank you so much. This is a brand new channel. This is my first video on YouTube. Please, 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 please hit the like button and subscribe for more, because I'm going to be creating more content. This is just the dashboard. If you're interested, more sections are going to come into play. And one way of you telling me thank you or appreciating whatever content that I'm doing is by liking this video and then subscribing to my channel. Thanks, guys. Peace out.